Part 27. The Rebirth of Space, the Lucky Girl from a Farm Family. Author, He Would Fire Every. Chapter 261. Chapter 261 Friends. Li Tao said, I only go to Bowen's house for drinks occasionally, why do I ask about this? Gu Huayu briefly talked about Yang Jian's affairs without going into too much detail. Said, Yang Jian is a bit suspicious. I want to send someone to keep an eye on it, but the street is small and sideways. Those who go in and out of there are all residents of that area, and there are very few strangers. So, I am worried. The other party notices. Li Tao nodded, okay, I understand. I'll keep an eye on it for you later. Looking at Li Tao's sincere and serious look, Gu Huayu felt a little dazed. Thinking about how much she disliked the man in front of her when they first met him on the streets of Hongcheng. At that time, she never dreamed that one day she and Li Tao would become good friends. What about me? What can I do for you? Shi Yamei's question brought Gu Huayu back from her thoughts. Gu Huayu asked, has your wedding date been set? I heard from my grandmother that your wedding date will be set for the year before. Shi Yamei shook his head and said, not yet, we have to wait until the wedding date is decided, and then we can see the master to see the schedule. The date was set on the 10th day of August. The elders of both parties decided to set the wedding date in the year before next year, saying that there would be no spring next year and it would not be suitable to get married. In the no spring year, the solar term beginning of spring does not appear in the year. There is a saying that it is not suitable to get married if you are young and have no youth. Gu Huayu said, the wedding date was set a year ago. It's already the end of June and it's coming in a blink of an eye. You should be busy with your wedding. Have you started embroidering the wedding dress? Gu Huayu knows that no matter what era she is born in, a wedding is like a big project, extremely complicated, and requires many things to be done by oneself, which is tiring and laborious. Gu Huayu didn't want Shi Yamei to have any regrets, so she didn't want to take up her time. Li Tao looked at Shi Yamei and mocked, you can wield embroidery needles with your hands, which are used to wielding swords and guns. Although the words were sarcastic, they were full of concern. Shi Yamei raised his head and glared at Li Tao, and replied, what does it have to do with you? I'm not marrying you and letting you worry here. Gu Huayu looked at Li Tao and then at Shi Yamei, feeling speechless. When these two people get together, can't they have a good conversation? He started to argue with each other as soon as he opened his mouth. Li Tao took a sip of tea, put down the cup, bowed his hands and said, I would like to thank you for not marrying me. Only a tigress like you, like Yaming Hao, will hold you in the palm of her hand as a treasure. If you were someone else, who would care about you? Shi Yamei raised his hand as if to hit him. Li Tao quickly jumped up from the chair, holding the back of the chair with one hand and raising the other hand to protect himself. Hey, you woman, just say what you say if you win, say a few more words if you don't win, say a few words less. What hand do you use? A gentleman talks but doesn't do anything. Don't you understand this? Gu Xiao, stop her, otherwise, your shop will no longer be able to do business in a while. Shi Yamei acted in a very grand manner, and she was not angry at Li Tao at all. Not only was she not angry, but after hearing Li Tao's words, she felt a little sweet in her heart. Gu Huayu looked at Shi Yamei's slightly raised corners of his mouth and smiled, Yamei, look at how cowardly he is, just let him go. Shi Yamei gouged out Li Tao's eyes, walked down and said, for Xiao's sake, I'll spare you this time. Seeing Shi Yamei sit back, Li Tao dragged the chair far away and sat down after making sure he was safe. Li Tao sat down and said without fear of death, why did you spare me for Xiao Yu's sake? Don't think that I don't know, it's clear that my words have touched your heart. I don't know how much ecstasy soup Mr. Ye has poured into you to make you think of him in your eyes and in your heart. Shi Yamei's face turned red when Li Tao said it, and she bared her teeth at Li Tao in embarrassment. Li Er, are you itchy? My aunt tells you that if you let my aunt catch you, you will be dead. Li Tao hurriedly got up to get out of the way. Hence, one chased and the other hid, running back and forth in the living room. Finally, Li Tao hid behind Gu Huayu and shouted, Xiao, tell her to stop. Gu Huayu rarely calmed down Li Tao and said with a smile, you are a demon king after all. To be so timid is to disgrace your famous title. Li Tao responded casually, who said I was afraid of her? Do you really think I can't beat her? Should I let her? Good men don't fight with women. This is education. Would you like to go out and compete? Let's see who can beat whom. Shi Yamei took advantage of Li Tao's carelessness and pulled him out from behind Gu Huayu. Li Tao waved his hand hurriedly, you are great, I will admit defeat, okay. Shi Yamei raised his leg and kicked Li Tao in the crotch. He used the force of his hand to push, and Li Tao immediately fell to the ground. Are you admitting defeat? Li Tao said repeatedly, young man, I admit defeat, Shi Shaoxia is so powerful, I am convinced. Shi Yamei let go of his hand. Li Tao looked at Shi Yamei and said, give me a hand. Shi Yamei ignored him and returned to his seat to sit down. Gu Huayu stretched out her hand to give Li Tao a hand and said, you really deserve this mouth. Li Tao chuckled, sat down and touched the place where Shi Yamei kicked, and muttered, one tigress, that's right. Shi Yamei's eyes widened and he was about to have a seizure when Chao Yang came in and asked, Princess, are you having lunch here? Li Tao took the initiative and said, no, let's go out to eat. After finishing speaking, Li Tao turned to look at Gu Huayu and said, I heard that Huixianlu on Ma Xing Street has hired a new Hunan dish. If you like spicy food, let's go to Huixianlu for dinner today. How about it? Gu Huayu is a big foodie, especially loves Sichuan and Hunan cuisine. When she heard that there was something delicious, she immediately responded happily, of course. So the three of them went to Huixian Tower on Maxing Street. The waiter led the three of them to the private room on the second floor and asked, what do the three of you want to eat? Gu Huayu said first, Dongan chicken, fried bamboo shoe tips, fried blood duck, Zilong taking off his robe, braised cabbage heart with ban soup. 5 dishes for the three of us, is that enough? Li Tao said, just order it, I'll be the host. Shi Yamei nodded and said, that's enough. Gu Huayu said to the waiter, let's take these first. If there's not enough, we'll order more. The waiter steps back. Second master, a questioning voice sounded outside the door. The three of them turned to look over, and Gu Huayu recognized Li Cheng's servant He Quan at a glance. After Izumi saw Li Tao clearly, he entered the room and greeted Li Tao first, and then greeted Gu Huayu and Shi Yamei. Li Tao asked, brother, are you eating here too? Izumi leaned forward and responded, yes, I and your prince, the crown prince of Ningyuan, the eldest son of the General Genkuo, and Mr. Lu from the Ministry of Revenue, are having dinner at the Penglai Hall opposite. Li Tao nodded, I understand, you go down first. After Izumi stepped back, Li Tao stood up and said, you two sit down first, and I'll go to the other side to say hello. Shi Yamei said, you stay over there to eat, just remember to pay for the table. Li Tao glanced at Shi Yamei and said, what a beautiful idea. You ordered so many delicious foods in a small talk. You two are eating happily here, but you asked me to go over there and listen to someone's lecture. Looking at Huayu but smiling and saying nothing. Shi Yamei raised his eyebrows and asked, who dares to lecture you? Li Tao ignored her and turned to the opposite side. Shi Yamei smiled and said, demon kings with a good reputation are sometimes scolded by others. You devil king is really bad at it? Li Tao turned around and said, it's really not easy for me, a devil in this world, to accept your ridicule, beatings and scoldings all the time. After saying that, Li Tao raised his eyebrows at her. Shiyame was speechless for a moment. Li Tao pushed the door open and entered the Penglai hall. The people in the room were stunned for a moment, then smiled and greeted him to sit down. Li Tao first bowed to the king of Qi who was sitting at the top, and then bowed to everyone present. "Thank you, brothers. Brothers, sit down. I have made an appointment with a friend, so I won't disturb you all." King Qi said, "Since we have met, bring your friends over so that we can have more fun together." Li Tao shook his head and politely declined, "It's better to say goodbye, it's not very convenient." King Qi asked doubtfully, "Isn't it convenient?" Zhang Ying, the eldest son of the Genkuo general's mansion, smiled and said, "Second young master, your friend must not be a lady from some family, right?" Li Tao leaned forward and said, "Brother Zhang is really right, so it's not very convenient." Lin Wangshu, the prince of Ningyuanhou, said, "The second young master really invited a lady to have dinner with him. I wonder which lady it is." Li Tao didn't want others to think too much about Gu Huayu and Shi Yame, so he simply said frankly, "Princess Yan Ran and the third lady of Shangshishi's house." Lin Wangshu did not expect that it was Princess Yan Ran and Miss Shi San, and it was too late to continue gossiping. "Just nod and say yes." Just as Li Tao turned around to leave, Lu Yu stood up and said, "I am related to Miss Shi San and Princess Yan Ran, so I have to go over and say hello." On the day of the flower party at Huaqing Palace, Zhang Ying's sister Zhang Menghua returned home and told him about what happened in Huaqing Palace. Others couldn't understand the two rice cake pigs that Gu Huayu threw out, but Zhang Menghua, who had practiced martial arts with his brother since he was a child, could tell. Zhang Menghua admired the princess very much, which made Zhang Ying extremely curious about Hua Yan Ran. Zhang Ying saw that Lu Yu was about to go over to say hello, so she stood up and said, "We are all acquaintances. There is no need to avoid suspicion. It is reasonable for me to go and say hello." Zhang Ying usually interacts a lot with the Shi brothers, and is also familiar with Shi Yame. Lin Wangshu saw the two of them getting up, and he also got up and said, "Since you are all going, why don't I come along too?" Li Cheng saw the three of them standing up and hurriedly greeted them, "You all sit down." As Men Yang said, "We are all acquaintances, so there is no need to avoid suspicion. Go down and invite the princess and Miss Shi San to come over." Men Yang is the given name of Zhang Ying. Li Tao wanted to say something to stop him, but when he met Li Cheng's gaze, he swallowed his words again. The king of Qi had spoken, and Li Tao could not stop him, so he had to follow Li Cheng back to the opposite side. Gu Huayu raised her head and saw Li Cheng coming, and was not surprised. She touched Shi Yame with her hand and motioned for her to get up. Li Cheng bowed his head and greeted Gu Huayu and Shi Yame. Gu Huayu returned the courtesy to Li Chenfu and said politely, "Master Li, what a coincidence." Li Cheng leaned forward and said, "It's a coincidence. It's a rare encounter. I would like to invite the princess and Miss Shi San to have a meal together. I wonder if you two can show your respect." After saying that, Li Cheng felt a little presumptuous again, and quickly explained, "Across the way, there are the Prince of Qi, the eldest son of Ningyuanhou Mansion, the Grand Master Zhang from the residence of General Genkuo, and the Grand Master Lu from the residence of Lu Shilang of the Ministry of War. These are familiar people, no outsiders. Shi Yame has a forthright temperament. Except for King Qi and Li Cheng, she is familiar with everyone else, so she doesn't mind. She just doesn't know whether Gu Huayu is willing." Shi Yame turned to look at Gu Huayu and asked, "Xiao, what do you think?" Gu Huayu knew that if she didn't go over, the people opposite would inevitably come over to say hello. "I can do it, it's up to you, Yame." Shi Yame said to Li Cheng, "Then let's not bother you." Li Cheng leaned forward and said, "I don't dare to accept it. It's an honor for me to be honored by the two of you. The princess invites you, Miss Shi San." Gu Huayu asked Shi Yame to walk in front, and she walked behind Shi Yame. Li Tao came over and whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't know that the prince and the others were here beforehand." Gu Huayu smiled and said softly, "It's okay, don't take it to heart." Gu Huayu and Shi Yamei entered the Penglai Hall. King Qi and others had already stood up. Shi Yamei and Gu Huayu first paid homage to King Fu Shen of Qi, and then to Lu Yu, Zhang Ying, and others. After a while of greetings, Li Cheng called everyone to take their seats. It turns out that the King of Qi is sitting on the throne, with Zhang Ying sitting on the right of the King of Qi, Lin Wangshu sitting next to Zhang Ying, Li Cheng sitting on the left of the King of Qi, and Lu Yu sitting next to Li Cheng. Three people suddenly joined, and Gu Huayu is still the princess, so the position needs to be changed. In terms of rank, Gu Huayu should sit next to King Qi. Gu Huayu saw the bowls and chopsticks placed on the table and said to Li Cheng, "You sit as you did before. The three of us can sit here." As soon as Gu Huayu entered the door, King Qi's eyes lit up. It turned out that Hua Yanran looked so beautiful. As a prince, King Qi has seen many beauties. Hua Yanran was the first person who made him not want to take his eyes away. King Qi knew that it would be rude to stare at people closely, so he forced himself to look away, but his eyes were not obedient and would always glance at Gu Huayu intentionally or unintentionally. This, Li Cheng looked at King Qi. King Qi looked at Gu Huayu and met Gu Huayu's eyes. In his heart, King Qi hoped that Gu Huayu would sit next to him, but he said, "Do as the princess says." When the words came out, King Qi himself was surprised. He had just said something that was against his will. King Qi reached out to pick up the teacup and sipped the tea with his head down to cover up his inner panic. Li Cheng heard from King Qi and asked He Quan to set out the tableware. Gu Huayu heard Zikan talk about Lu Yu before and knew that Lu Yu treated Shi Yamei unusually. But now Shi Yamei is engaged to young Master Ye, and young Master Ye is Zi Qin's eldest cousin. When Ye Shangshu died, he entrusted the Ye family to Zi Qin. The affairs of young Master Ye were Zi Qin's affairs, and Zi Qin's affairs were her affairs. Thinking like this, Gu Huayu felt that she should help Mr. Ye keep an eye on him. Gu Huayu has always been an action person. She sat next to Lu Yu first and separated herself between Lu Yu and Shi Yamei. There are two more ladies at the table, so it is naturally difficult to continue the previous conversation. For a moment, I didn't know what to say, and the situation became a little awkward. Li Cheng was speechless and asked, "What kind of tea will the princess and Miss Shi-san drink?" Li Tao blurted out, "Guapian and Taiguanyan." After Li Tao finished speaking, seeing everyone looking at him, Li Tao touched his nose uncomfortably, and then said, "The princess drinks melon slices, and Miss Shi-san drinks Taiguanyan." Lu Yu looked sideways at Shi Yamei and said, "Aren't you a melon drinker?" End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, He Would Fire Every. Chapter 262. Chapter 262 King Qi. Shi Yamei looked at Gu Huayu and said, "The melon slices are too light. In comparison, I still like Taiguanyan." Lu Yu was silent and said no more words. Zhang Ying looked at Gu Huayu and asked, "Is the princess good at darts?" Gu Huayu shook her head and replied, "I'm not good at it." "Why does Mr. Zhang ask like this?" Zhang Ying said with some disappointment, "My sister-in-law came back from the flower party at Huaking Palace the day before yesterday, and she was full of praise for the princess's accuracy in throwing things. I thought the princess was good at darts." Shi Yamei turned her head to look at Gu Huayu and asked in a low voice, "You went to Huaking Palace to attend the flower party? What happened?" Gu Huayu squeezed Shi Yamei's hand to show comfort, and replied to Zhang Ying, "Oh, Miss Zhang is exaggerating. I grew up in the mountains, and I usually like to go to the mountains to chop firewood with my brother. As time went by, I learned some games played by boys, so when I threw things, my accuracy was pretty good." Zhang Ying became interested and asked, "How accurate is it?" How about we play a game of pot throwing? Gu Huayu had no intention of competing. She just wanted to finish her meal early and leave. King Qi was full of curiosity about Gu Huayu, and he had an impulse in his heart to know more about this girl. The king of Qi has always been a person with a strong sense of purpose. With an idea in my heart, my brain quickly started to use the existing conditions to create opportunities for myself. He not only wanted to know how accurate Gu Huayu's words were, he also wanted to interact more with Gu Huayu to eliminate the strangeness of the first meeting and make plans for the next meeting. After making up his mind, King Qi said, "Menyang's suggestion is good. Let's divide the teams and compete. How about it? The prince wants to play, what can others say? Of course we try our best to cooperate." Lin Wangshu and Lu Yu nodded. Lin Wangshu followed King Qi's words and said, "Of course, the 8 of us will be divided into 2 groups. Since it was Menyang who suggested it, how about Menyang leading one group and the other group being led by the prince? The king of Qi is interested in playing, so naturally he should be the leader." Lin Wangshu sensibly handed over the right to speak to King Qi. King Qi was quite satisfied with Lin Wangshu's arrangement. Zhang Ying and Hua Yanran competed. Naturally, the 2 of them could not be in the same group. Now that Zhang Ying is the team leader, Hua Yanran automatically joins her own group. There were only 8 people at the moment, so Lin Wangshu made arrangements based on his feeling. When he received the admiring look from King Qi, his heart was agitated, and he didn't understand how he could please this man. The king of Qi continued one sentence and said no more. Lin Wangshu looked at everyone and saw that no one had the intention to speak. Lin Wangshu thought that if he had just started, he would complete the task, so he said, "The 2 team leaders have been selected, and the remaining people will be divided into 2 groups. Excluding the 2 leaders, there are still 6 people left, 4 men and 2 women." The princess and Miss Shi-san were divided into groups. Menyang wanted to compete with the princess, so the princess was assigned to the prince's group, and Miss Shi-san was assigned to Menyang's group. "You 2 brothers, the eldest young master and the second young master, are divided into 2 groups. I am in a group with Minzi. How about it?" Minzi is Lu Yu's character. Li Tao was the first to say, "I have no objection, I will be in the prince's group." Lin Wangshu looked at Lu Yu and asked, "Where's Minzi? Which group do you choose?" Lu Yu said, "Since the second young master chose Wang Ye's group, then I will choose Menyang's group." Gu Huayu was speechless. At the dinner table, she tried to separate the 2 of them, but unexpectedly a game of pot throwing happened and they were brought together again. Gu Huayu thought to herself, "Mr. Ye, I have tried my best. I can only pray that the relationship between you and Shi-san is made of copper and iron walls and can withstand the test." Lin Wangshu said with a smile, "Minzi will go to Menyang's group, then I will go to Wang Jai's group, we will form a team to complete, and then formulate the rules of the game. We follow the traditional competition method, best of 3 games. All team members need to participate. Each person has 4 arrows. In order to save time, 4 pots are placed in front. 4 people throw at the same time, and then count to find the group with the most hits. To win. How about it?" Lu Yu asked, "If the 2 groups hit the same number of arrows, how do we count them?" Lin Wangshu thought for a while and said, "Then make it more difficult, lengthen the throwing distance, and add another round. Until the winner is determined." Li Tao said, "Since it is a competition, there must be a lottery." "What is the lottery?" Lin Wangshu looked at King Qi and asked, "My lord, what do you think we should use to make the lottery?" King Qi thought for a while and said, "Whoever wins, how about I invite this group of people to go to Penyuan to watch a play?" "Wow, this is a good lottery," Li Tao exclaimed. Others also looked happy and said yes again and again. Gu Huayu turned her head to look at Shi Yamei and asked in a low voice, "Is it difficult to watch Penyuan's play?" Shi Yamei nodded and whispered, Pan's Liyuan performs a play every 3 days. There are only 30 seats in the venue, and there is no room for one more. To watch his plays, you must make a reservation in advance. It is said that his show is scheduled for half a year. Gu Huayu asked, the show is scheduled for half a year? Then today's lottery will not be cashed out until half a year later. No need, Pan Junian, the owner of Pan's Liyuan, and the prince are close friends. Li Tao stood beside Gu Huayu at some point and replied in a low voice. That's it. Gu Huayu nodded, thinking about how to deal with this competition. Li Tao saw King Qi and Lin Wangshu looking towards them and said to Gu Hua, let's go over. Gu Huayu nodded and walked over with Li Tao. Gu Huayu followed Li Tao around the screen, only to realize that there was something special about this room. In front of the screen is an ordinary elegant room, behind the screen is a magnificent lobby, and the furnishings in the room are all exquisite. Li Tao turned his head and saw Gu Huayu's surprised expression, and explained, this place is spacious and can be used for guests to hold various parties or activities. Gu Huayu nodded while looking at it. The last time she came here, she only sat outside and thought it was like the Huixian Tower. Princess, second young master, come here quickly and try your hand. Lin Wangshu shouted at the two of them with an arrow in his hand. Li Tao raised his voice and responded, here we come. Come on, let's go there. Gu Huayu walked over, and Lin Wangshu distributed arrows and asked, has the princess ever played hutong? Gu Huayu shook her head and replied truthfully, I haven't played it before. King Qi smiled and explained, it's okay. This game is very simple. People stand here and throw arrows into the pot over there. The winner is decided by the number of arrows thrown. King Qi pointed to the pot not far away as he spoke. Li Tao looked at King Qi, who patiently explained to Gu Huayu, and couldn't help but wonder, when did King Qi become so patient? In Li Tao's mind, this cousin was always unsmiling, solemn, and enigmatic. Gu Huayu thanked her, and then visually checked that the pot was less than 2 meters away from where she threw it, which was about the distance she could spread her arms. With her skill, she can hit it even from a further distance. King Qi stood next to Gu Huayu, holding an arrow in his hand, and said to Gu Huayu, Yan Ran, I will give you an example. In this way, with your legs as wide as your shoulders, your hand reaches the position of the arrow, and you raise your hand to throw the arrow toward the mouth of the pot. Easy. King Qi said as he steadily threw the arrow in his hand into the pot. Lin Wangshu saw King Qi joining in and applauded, Your Majesty, you are very skilled. Li Tao followed the applause and said, Xiao, try it, just like the prince, just relax. Xiao, Yan Ran's name. King Qi turned around and asked. Li Tao leaned forward and said, yes, Gu Huayu is another name for the princess. The king of Qi murmured, looking at the flowers are beautiful, the smiles are beautiful, wonderful. Gu Huayu didn't pay attention to King Qi's muttering, picked up an arrow and threw it into the pot. The arrow did as she expected and did not go into the pot. When Li Tao saw the arrow falling outside the pot, he handed another arrow over and comforted him, don't be impatient, try again. Gu Huayu took the arrow and took a deep breath, her expression visibly nervous. This thing looks simple, but it's actually very difficult. Lin Wangshu became nervous as he watched. Princess, relax, don't be nervous. Gu Huayu looked gratefully towards the forest and looked at herself. Thank you, Prince Lin. With that said, Gu Huayu threw the arrow at the pot again. The arrow escaped from Gu Huayu's hand, tremblingly rushed to the front of the pot and fell. Before anyone could speak, Gu Huayu reached out to Li Tao and said, give me another one. Li Tao handed the arrow to Gu Huayu and did not forget to comfort him, don't be nervous, relax, it'll be fine. Gu Huayu took the arrow, raised her hand and made 2 fake throws in the air to test the feel. King Qi stood on the side and said, Yan Ran, take it easy. Before King Qi could finish what he said, Gu Huayu threw out the arrow in his hand. This time, the arrow fell steadily into the pot. Li Tao stamped his feet and clenched his fists and waved. Xiao, good job. King Qi's eyes were full of appreciation. Gu Huayu reached out and Li Tao handed the arrow to her hand tacitly. Gu Huayu took the arrow and tried it first, then threw the arrow out. The arrow fell steadily into the pot again. Li Tao and Lin Wangshu cheered for her, and King Qi smiled and congratulated her. Shi Yame came over and said, Xiao, it's okay. Every shot is accurate. Li Tao said before Gu Huayu could, Xiao must be right when he takes action. I have been looking forward to Pan Yuan's play for several years. Today, Xiao has made my dream come true. Shi Yame sneered, it's not like Xiao is competing alone. So what if Xiao hits all 4 arrows? What if you don't hit the shot yourself? It's all in vain. Li Tao was too lazy to argue with Shi Yame. He raised the arrow in his hand and said, don't talk about whether you have these or not. It's up to you in the competition. Come, bring us some money. Let's guess the pros and cons and decide who goes first. Izumi hurriedly handed over the money. Zhang Ying guessed correctly and his group voted first. Zhang Ying's group and Li Chen were weaker, putting in 3 shots, while the others put in 4. The king of Qi made a group, and each one of them threw in, and all 12 arrows hit. The Qi Wan group won the first game. In the second game, Zhang Ying's group advanced. Gu Huayu, the king of Qi, put in 3 pieces, and the rest put in 4 pieces. The 2 groups were tied. In the third round, both sides hit the mark. So move the throwing point back 2 feet and compare again. In this round, Zhang Ying's team still voted first, Li Cheng's team voted second, and the rest all scored. It was the turn of the Qi Wan group. Li Tao said to Gu Hua, relax, don't be nervous. Take care of yourself, Xiao is more stable than you. Shi Yame seized every opportunity to ridicule Li Tao. Li Tao glared at Shi Yame and said, Shi-san, shut up. Shi Yame spread his hands and said, shut up, you can't make a shot either. If you don't believe me, try it. Gu Hua said, don't argue with her, focus on yours. Li Tao listened to Gu Huayu's words and ignored Shi Yame. At the end of this round, Gu Huayu made 3 shots, Lin Wangshu made 3 shots, and King Qi and Li Tao made 4 shots. Both sides have the same number of arrows, so there is another round. Li Chen was so nervous that his hands were shaking, so he only made 2 shots, while the others hit all 4. It was the turn of King Qi's team. King Qi and Li Tao were as stable as ever, with all 4 winning, Gu Huayu winning 3, and Lin Wangshu winning 2. Lin Wangshu apologized to King Qi, I'm sorry, I'm holding everyone back. Gu Huayu also looked apologetic. Li Tao smiled and said, it's just a game, just for fun, don't take it seriously. King Qi patted Lin Wangshu on the shoulder and said, Brother Tao is right. It's rare for everyone to get together for fun, so don't take it to heart. After I have arranged Pan Yuan's play, I will inform everyone. Let's go together. Everyone bowed to King Qi to thank him, and Gu Huayu had no choice but to follow Fu Shen to say thank you. Zhang Ying came over and wanted to talk to Gu Huayu. Wei Tian, who was next to King Qi, came in and said, Your Majesty, the food is ready. Do you want to pass it on now? King Qi nodded, okay. The group of people returned to the private room, and the waiters poured in like water. They washed their hands and faces, and then receded like the tide. Gu Huayu sat down, but by mistake, the table was already filled with delicacies. In line with the principle of saying nothing when eating and not speaking when sleeping, Gu Huayu only immersed herself in eating. Li Tao knew that Gu Huayu had a strong taste, so whenever there was spicy food, he would pick it up for Gu Huayu. At the end of the meal, Gu Huayu ate to the fullest. After dinner, After drinking 2 cups of tea, Gu Huayu and Shi Yamei stood up to say goodbye. Li Tao then stood up and bowed to King Qi, "Your Majesty, I would like to see off the princess and Miss Shi-san." King Qi nodded and said, "Okay. Later, I will ask someone to send Pan Yuan's post to you." Gu Huayu and Shi Yamei thanked each other and exited Penglai Hall. Li Tao followed him out and asked, "Xiao, are you going back to Wutong Lane or Daowen Street?" Gu Huayu thought for a while and said, "Go back to Wutong Lane. You don't have to see us off. I'll just go back with Yamei." Li Tao shook his head and said, "I will send you back, otherwise I won't worry." Shi Yamei said, "Anyway, he has nothing to do. If he wants to send it, just let him send it." "That's right, I have nothing to do anyway, so I'll see you off just to eat." Gu Huayu didn't talk much anymore. Going to Panyuan to watch a play, Li Tao was in a strange mood and acted like a chatterbox along the way. Gu Huayu said, "I can't tell you like going to the theater so much." He likes to watch Pan Yuan's plays, but he doesn't bother to watch other plays, Shi Yamei said. Gu Huayu was very curious about Pan Yuan. She had not been able to ask too many questions in front of everyone in Huixian Tower before. Pan Yuan performs a play every 3 days, and only 30 people can sit in each play. Can they support a troupe? Shi Yamei said, "Well, let Li Er tell you. He likes Pan Yuan's plays and knows a lot about the Pan family." Li Tao said with a bit of pride, "Shi-san is right to the point. I really have a serious understanding of the Pan family." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 263. Chapter 263. Everything has a reason. Gu Huayu raised the car curtains, looked at Li Tao and urged, "Hurry up and say something." Li Tao dismounted, threw the reins to Quanzi, jumped into the carriage, opened the curtain and got into the carriage. "Why did you get in the car?" Shi Yamei glared at Li Tao. Li Tao rolled his eyes at her, "Why don't we get in the car and talk to each other on the street?" "What?" Miss Shi-san, who has always had her own way of doing things and doesn't stick to trivial matters, has started to pay attention to etiquette. Shi Yamei raised her foot and kicked Li Tao. "You guys, this is Xiao's carriage. You, a grown man, got into Xiao's carriage. What do you want others to think of Xiao? Are you going to lose Xiao's reputation?" Li Tao raised his hand and patted his head and said, "Damn it, I was so excited that I forgot about this. Xiao, I'm sorry. I'm going down." Before Gu Huayu could speak, Shi Yamei raised his leg and kicked, "Get out of here." Li Tao got out of the car quickly, took the reins from Quanzi's hand, and followed the carriage on horseback. Seeing that Shi Yamei was angry, Gu Huayu said with relief, "Forget it, don't be angry, we are brothers in Li Er's heart, not women," so he didn't think about that at all. "You have a reputation for being informal in the capital, but as a princess, I grew up in the countryside, so it is normal for me to not know etiquette. Besides, let others think whatever they think. Let's live our lives without caring about other people's opinions." Shi Yamei looked at Gu Huayu and said, "You really can see clearly." Gu Huayu patted her hand and said, "If you are upright, don't be afraid of slanting shadows. Just be yourself." Gu Huayu threw up the curtain and said to Li Tao, "Let's just talk about Pan Yuan." Li Tao said, "Pan Yuan is a special existence among the Beijing opera troupes. She is unique not only in the capital but in the whole of Daxing. What's so special about it? What's special about Pan Yuan is that he is not afraid of powerful people and does not accept invitations from outside." Gu Huayu hit Li Tao and said, "Wait, no outside invitations. A theater troupe doesn't accept outside invitations." Gu Huayu felt that she was a little confused. There were people in every area who were not afraid of the powerful and proud. He could understand this. But it doesn't require outside invitations. Is it really good for a troop not to have outside invitations? Li Tao nodded. The reason why Pan Yuan is not afraid of powerful people and does not accept outside invitations is because his family has the imperial edict of the founding emperor. Pan Yuan will not accept invitations from anyone, and will not perform on stage in any mansion. No one can force anyone with power. Why did the founding emperor do this? Doesn't Li Yuan House rely on the stage to make a living? If others invite him, it is because they like him, which means he is a good actor. Singers have been practicing hard since childhood, aren't they just for the stage? 1 minute on stage and 10 years off stage. Their duty is to act out the touching stories in the storybook for everyone to see. Their value lies in playing the characters in the script and leaving vivid characters in the hearts of the audience. For them, isn't the most dazzling and glorious moment in their lives when they receive warm applause from the audience after finishing their performance? The founding emperor was not mentally ill, wasn't he? He gave such an imperial edict to people, and didn't he mean to ruin their future? Li Tao looked around nervously and said in a low voice, "Xiao, can you please lower your voice? You dare to say such disrespectful words loudly." Gu Huayu looked to the side and said, "Isn't this the truth?" As she spoke, her voice plummeted. "It's not that the emperor doesn't want him to go on stage, he just doesn't want people to look down on him or disrespect him. You have to know that actors live in the lower class and have a very difficult life." Gu Huawa said, "So the emperor is really kind-hearted?" "I'm sorry for interrupting you. You can continue." It is said that the ancestors of the Pan family saved the life of the founding emperor. After the founding emperor brought peace to the world, he rewarded people according to their merits and wanted to give the ancestors of the Pan family an official position. The ancestor of the Pan family did not like to be an official, but only liked to sing opera. So the founding emperor gave the ancestor of the Pan family a garden so that he could sing opera in his home, which is now Pan Garden. At the same time, the emperor issued the imperial edict. By the way, the Pan family also has a gold medal to avoid death. A gold medal to avoid death, Shi Yame came over curiously. Li Tao nodded. You don't know, right? The only gold medal for immunity from death in Daxing. Also, if anyone acts wild in the Panjiawan house, the Pan family's servants can beat him to death with a stick without being held accountable. Gu Huayu and Shi Yame looked at Li Tao in shock. Really? A gold medal to avoid death? Li Tao nodded heavily. Really? Shi Yame said, "This is amazing. I didn't even know it." Li Tao nodded and said, "It's indeed amazing. It's normal if you don't know. The Pan family is very low-key in everything they do. They only focus on the operas they are familiar with and don't care about worldly affairs. This has been the case for generations. Because of this, Pan Yuan has cultivated many famous actors. Nowadays, all the most popular artists in the capital come from Pan Yuan." After what Li Tao said, Gu Huayu's curiosity about Pan Yuan greatly increased. Shi Yame said, "I know this. The pillars of the Lu family elephant shed in the south of the city, Wanyan and Hefen, came from Pan Yuan." "Yes, they both came from Pan Yuan. There is also the 10-mile spring breeze at Dongshui Gate in the east of the city, and the pillars and jade of his family, Yunfei, also came from Pan Yuan." As he spoke, the carriage and horses returned to Wutong Lane. Gu Huayu asked, "Would you two go in and have a cup of tea?" Shi Yame shook his head. "No, I've been out for a long time today. I have to go back quickly, otherwise I will be punished." After the marriage with Ye Minghao was settled, Mrs. Ping began to restrain Shi Yame and not allow him to go out at will. If he went out, he had to go back at the specified time. Gu Huayu knew that she was being held tightly, so she did not hold her back. She only told Li Tao, "Send Yame back." "Don't worry, I won't worry." Gu Huayu looked at Shi Yame. After Li Tao and his party left, she turned and entered the yard. Princess. Gu Huayu entered the house and saw Qingyu coming towards her, so she asked, "When did you come back? How was the investigation? Did you find anything?" Qingyu leaned forward and said, "I've been back for 2/4 of an hour. I found out that Yang Jining, the boss of the Good Luck Gambling House, is Yang Jian's younger brother. And the owner of the Good Luck Gambling House is Huarujun from Huafu." Gu Huayu stopped and turned to look at Qingyu. "Huarujun? Huasu's son?" Qingyu nodded and said, "Yes, Huarujun is the eldest son of Huasu, 2 years older than Huaru Iming. This man is very shrewd and hides himself very well. Compared to Huaru Iming, who lingers in Yanliu Lane, Huarujun has been diligent and studious since he was a child, has a stable personality, and is smart and capable. Huasu thought highly of him during his lifetime and entrusted him with handling many affairs of Long Shadow Guard. After Huasu's death, the Lu family could not tolerate Huasu's concubines and kicked them out of the Hua mansion. After coming out of Huafu, Huarujun moved to the back streets of Baekangmen. Gu Huayu frowned slightly. "So, Yang Jian is now being used by Huarujun? Does Huarujun currently hold a position in Lunjing Guard?" Qingyu shook his head. After Huasu died, Lu not only kicked Huarujun, Huaruki and others out of Hua Mansion, but also asked Huaru Iming to remove Huarujun from his position in Lunjing Guard. However, long the people from the Shadow Guard seemed to be more impressed by Huarujun. Gu Huayu asked, "How long has the Lucky Casino been open? Have you checked?" Qingyu nodded and said, "I checked and found that Lucky Fortune shop has been open for more than 6 years. More than 6 years? How old was Huarujun at that time? He dared to open a gambling house. This person is not simple. If you check again, the more detailed the better." Qingyu got the order, turned around and walked out. The Prime Minister's mansion saw off the who had delivered the order, and the house immediately began to boil like boiling water. In the past 2 days, the haze surrounding the house has been swept away, and there is a feeling in the house that the clouds and fog have been cleared and the sky is clear. Everyone in the house congratulated Wang Piyun one after another, and Wang Piyun happily thanked everyone. After everyone dispersed, Madame Shangguan called Ms. Kui and Wang Piyun to Anfu Hall. Mani Yang knew that the old lady had something to say to the third lady, and immediately took the maid out of the house. Wang Piyun knelt down in front of Ms. Shangguan. "Thank you, Grandma, for taking care of Yuna in everything." Ms. Shangguan looked at her granddaughter with loving eyes and said, "Okay, why are you kneeling down? Get up quickly and help Sister Yun up." Ms. Kui stepped forward to help her daughter up. Ms. Shangguan patted the seat next to her and said, "Come, sit next to Grandma." Wang Piyun sat down obediently. Madame Shangguan held Wang Piyun in her hand and said, "Grandma sees that you are really satisfied with this marriage. Grandma is sincerely happy for you. Sister Yun, you are a blessed person when you marry into the royal family. From now on, you should no longer act rashly and think twice before doing anything you say or do. Understand?" Wang Piyun raised his head and looked at Ms. Shangguan. "Grandma." Ms. Shangguan clapped her hand and said, "The decree granting marriage has been issued, and the wedding date is not far away. In these 2 days, people from the Ministry of Etiquette will come to discuss the wedding date and wedding matters. The nuns from the palace will also come to teach the rules, and Sister Yun will learn the rules carefully. You are Sister Yun's mother. You should take good care of Sister Yun's marriage and put everything else aside. Don't make any extraneous matters." Wang Piyun and Ms. Kui looked at each other quickly, leaned forward, and said, "Yes, I would like to listen to my grandmother's teachings." Shangguan's old lady saw the mother and daughter exchanging glances, and was afraid that the two of them would go against each other and cause trouble. So he said bluntly, Don't mess with that girl from the Hua family. That girl is not simple. She has people from the Long Shadow Guard beside her. Sister Yun, you are no match for her. Do you understand? Wang Piyun blurted out, didn't she grow up in the mountains? How come there are people from the Long Shadow Guard around her? Even if she grew up in the mountains, she is still Hualing's daughter. It's not surprising that there are people from the Long Shadow Guard around her. Then my granddaughter's anger was in vain, Wang Piyun said in a low voice. Mrs. Shangguan scolded her with a straight face, you girl, I just said you were sensible. Are you acting sensible? It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. You don't have the patience to do so? How to become a big deal? One day, when the prince ascends to that position, and you become the most noble woman in the world, why can't you let out such a bad breath? Ms. Kui took the first step and bowed to Mrs. Shangguan and said, my mother taught you the right lesson. Sister Yun, please apologize to my grandmother quickly. Wang Piyun followed his words and apologized to Mrs. Shangguan. Mrs. Shangguan's face softened, and she talked to the two of them for another conversation before sending them back. King Yu left and did not come back until Yushi. Princess, as you said, this Huarujun is really not simple. In addition to running a gambling house, he also runs a carriage and horse shop, a tea house and a cloth shop. Sui-er looked at Qingyu, who hurriedly entered the house, turned around and asked, Princess, who is Huarujun? Huasu's eldest son lives in the back alley of Baekangmen. Were all these shops opened 6 years ago? Gu Huayu first replied to Sui-er, then turned to Qingyu and asked. Qingyu said, Shunfeng carriage shop and Jingbo tea house were opened 6 years ago, and Hualanba village was opened the year before last. Sui-er straightened his back, why didn't we notice him before? Gu Huayu turned the fish charm in her hand. After Huasu died, Mrs. Lu kicked him out of Hua Mansion. It can be seen that Mrs. Lu had been guarding against him before. This man dared to open a gambling house at a young age, and his mind was beyond the reach of others. First of all, our previous focus was on Huaruiming and Lu, and we did not notice him. Secondly, when Huarujun was guarding against the Lu family, he naturally did important things in a quiet voice, so that no one would know what he was doing. Sui-er said, it's true that a biting dog makes no sound. Hitchhiker's business is not small, there are branches of Hitchhiker's shop all over the capital. There is also the Jingbo tea house. There is a Jingbo tea house near almost all yamen in Beijing. Qingyu nodded. I also found out that after Huasu died, Huarujun came out from the Lunjing Guard. Giun Pavilion's business went from bad to worse, and Huarujun took the opportunity to attract many people. The current Jingbo tea house, most of the stewards in the ride-hailing company are from Longjingwei. Sui-er played with the teacup and said, it seems that the steward of Baofeng Bank doesn't listen to Huaruiming either. Qingyu said, Huaruiming is really a showman, just like his people, they look good but are useless. Gu Huayu said, on the surface, I still listen. After all, Huaruiming is the commander. In the mainland, I don't know who sent Baofeng Bank. Sui-er put down the teacup, looked at Gu Huayu and said, the day before yesterday, our people watched Du Bin, who was next to the British Duke, meeting with Chinda, the shopkeeper of Baofeng Bank, in Huixian Tower. The younger one still couldn't figure out why the British father was doing this. For money? For power? In Daxing, the British Duke's Palace is a first-class Duke's Palace, the home of a military general, with military power in his hands, and a daughter who is the empress in the palace. He wants money, power, fame, and everything. Why is he still staring at Long Shadow Guard? Qingyu took over the words and said, the human heart is not as good as a snake swallowing an elephant. It's people like him that we are talking about. Gu Huayu was silent for a while and said, we can't just look at the appearance. Everything must have a reason. However, we haven't found the reason yet. Su'er nodded and said, the princess is right. It seems that Huaruiming has long been useless. Do we still need to keep an eye on him? Gu Huayu thought for a while and said, leave 2 people to keep an eye on Huaruiming, and send the rest to keep an eye on Huarujun. Huarujun is not simple, so they should be more cautious. Okay, I'll make arrangements for you with that. Su'er stood up. Qingyu and Su'er are here too. Wang Qin, Ruan Wu, and Han Shi walked from the veranda and greeted the people in the house through the open window. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 264. Chapter 264, Coming for Us. Wang Qin, Ruan Wu, and Han Shi entered the room. Gu Huayu stood up and greeted, Aunt Wang, Uncle Five, Uncle Han. Wang Qin raised the boiled peanuts in his hand and said, Princess, would you like to have 2 drinks? We will bring back some food. Su'er smiled and said, have you got the money from Giun Pavilion? Han Shi responded with a smile, shopkeeper Huang from Giun Pavilion personally delivered it to the door and said many kind words. Gu Huayu saw 3 people holding food in their hands. Said, okay, where to eat? Pavilion. Wang Qin looked around and said, the pavilion is cool. How about going to the pavilion? Gu Huayu nodded in agreement, okay. Wang Qin handed the food in his hand to the maid and asked her to put it in the pavilion. Ruan Wu explained, ask the kitchen to cut more and get more rock sugar. The maid replied, okay, I understand. A few people moved to the pavilion. Wang Qin walked beside Gu Huayu and said, Princess, please go to Zhuangzi to discuss the marriage between King Zhu and your cousin with your second uncle and his wife. Your second uncle and your second uncle's wife have no objections. Let us decide the marriage, no need to be extravagant. The second uncle and the second aunt are both diligent and frugal people, and their responsibilities are real. But the more this happened, the less Gu Huayu wanted to wrong them. Gu Huayu nodded and said, listen to my second uncle and don't be extravagant and wasteful. We will prepare a dowry for the young couple as the people in the capital marry their daughters. How we prepare for King Zhu, how people in the capital marry their sons. Marriage is a major event only once in a lifetime, so don't wrong them. Wang Qin leaned forward and said, everything else is easy to talk about. How should we arrange the wedding house? Should we buy a house now? Where to buy it? How big should we buy it? There is no extra yard in Wutong Lane for a wedding room. The house over Minjiao Pavilion is Xiao Shuang's natal family, so it is not suitable for a wedding room. Gu Huayu thought for a while and said, although King Zhu has lost his citizenship, he will still work in the government in the future. We will move to Yongchun Road next year. King Zhu's house needs to be bought near the old house on Yongchun Road. How big should it be? Just buy a 3-bedroom house. If you buy a small house, they might not have enough room to live in when they have children. What do you say? Wang Gu said with a smile, the princess has thought carefully. I will do as the princess said and go there tomorrow to have a look. By the way, this morning, when eunuch Gao came to the mansion to deliver the fish charm to the princess, another chamberlain beside the emperor went to the prime minister's palace to declare the imperial edict. The emperor granted marriage to the wise king and Miss Wang San of the prime minister's mansion. Gu Huayu discussed this matter with Lu Zikan, and now that he heard the news, Gu Huayu was not surprised. Gu Huayu said calmly, it's expected. Wang Qin asked, do we need to continue to keep an eye on the prime minister's mansion? Gu Huayu thought for a while and said, take the people back. Before Miss Wang San marries into the Xian prince's mansion, the prime minister's mansion should not dare to cause trouble again. They are also afraid that extraneous matters will disturb the marriage. That's right, many women would never dare to think about marrying into the royal family. The people in the prime minister's palace will definitely cherish this marriage. Gu Huayu didn't want to talk more about Wang Piyun, so she changed the subject and said, "We're here, let's go over." A few people arrived at the pavilion. The maid and mother-in-law had already warmed up the wine and arranged the food neatly. Gu Huayu looked around and asked Lonicera beside her, "Where's Shi Niang? Didn't you tell her we were drinking here?" Ling Dong bent her knees and said, "Back to the princess." Shi Niang heard that everyone was going to have wine in the pavilion, so she immediately ordered Chun Mi and the others to slice the meat, prepare charcoal fire, and roast it for the princess to eat. "Wow, we have barbecue today, perfect," Gu Huayu said. After a while, Shi Niang came over with her maid and mother-in-law. The women quickly set up the barbecue grill. Gu Huayu was so excited that she rolled up her sleeves and went to the battle in person to grill meat for everyone. King Zhou came over to help. "Princess, let the little one come, you go and have a rest." Gu Huayu sprinkled cumin on the barbecue and said, "Go and see if Xiao Shuang and the others have returned home. When they come back, let them eat barbecue together." After King Zhou turned around and left, Shi Niang came over with a handful of meat skewers and stood beside Gu Huayu to grill them. "Has their wedding date been set?" Gu Huayu replied, "Not yet. I'll find the master to choose an auspicious day in the past 2 days and settle their affairs before the end of the year." Shi Niang took the cumin bottle from Gu Huayu's hand and sprinkled it on the meat skewers while saying, "The cousin's marriage is completed. You have to worry about the second lady's marriage." Gu Huayu thought about it, nodded and said, "Yes, the second sister is not young anymore. Let's talk to Aunt Ping some other time and ask Aunt Ping to help take a look." "Where is the princess herself? When will the matter with Mr. Lulu be decided?" Shi Niang asked. Gu Huayu raised her head to look at Shi Niang, then lowered her head to grill the meat seriously. "My marriage will be discussed after I find out what happened to my father and mother." "What if we can't find out after a while? Your marriage will also be delayed. There is no conflict between discussing the marriage and finding out the truth, so why can't it be done at the same time? Or does the princess have other concerns?" Gu Huayu hesitated and said, "Sixth master is busy with the scientific examination and has no time to think about anything else." Shi Niang turned the meat skewers over and said, "Then let's wait until the scientific examination is over. Princess, when you meet a good person, you must hold it firmly in your hands. Otherwise, you will miss it for the rest of your life." Gu Huayu looked up at Shi Niang and asked, "How do you know Lulu is a good person?" Shi Niang said, "The people from Qingqiu Duke's mansion can't be missed." Gu Huayu stopped what she was doing, stared at Shi Niang and asked, "Are you familiar with the people in the Qingqiu palace?" Shi Niang's hand that spread cumin paused and said, "The men in Qingqiu's palace are dedicated and affectionate. Who in the capital doesn't know that the princess's flesh is going to be burnt?" Shi Niang looked at the meat skewers in Gu Huayu's hand and reminded. Gu Huayu hurriedly lowered her head and concentrated on the barbecue. "Xiao, why are you grilling meat tonight?" Gu Chengwan jumped to Gu Huayu's side. Gu Huayu gave some of the roasted meat to Gu Chengwan. "You guys have worked hard in the shop, let me grill you some kebabs to reward you." Gu Chengwan took the meat skewers and started eating. While eating, she said, "Thank you, but I really deserve a reward today." Gu Huayu roasted the remaining meat and handed it to King Zhu, asking him to share it with everyone. She picked up a handful of meat skewers and grilled them. While grilling, she asked, "Did you break the record again today?" Gu Chengwan brought a meat skewer to Gu Huayu's mouth. Gu Huayu took one look at it and took a bite from Gu Chenjuan's hand. Gu Chengwan took back her hand and continued to eat. As she walked, she said, "Xiao, how many bottles of fragrance do you think I sold today?" Gu Huayu looked up at her and asked, "How much?" "You guess." Gu Huayu thought for a while and said, 20 bottles. Gu Chengwan shook his head, "No, keep guessing." Gu Huayu said casually, 30. "No, please continue." Gu Huayu looked up at Gu Chengwan and saw her looking at him with bright eyes. So he said, 60. Gu Chengwan shook his head with a smile. Gu Huayu was also curious and asked, how much? Gu Chengwan said with a smile, 50 bottles of Nuaniang, 32 bottles of Wanzhou, a total of 83 bottles, including the ones bought by Xiaoshuang, Hengxia, and others. Today we sold a total of 152 bottles of incense Lu. How about it? Isn't it great? Give me a compliment. Gu Huayu smiled and gave her a thumbs up. Awesome. Wan Xiaoshuang said, in addition to perfume, there are also foundations and rouges. Chengwan sells the most foundations of various colors. She is the salesperson. She is so amazing. Between the few of us, there are no more. She sells more on her own. Gu Huayu gave Gu Chengwan a thumbs up again. Awesome. Gu Chengwan bumped Gu Huayu's shoulder with her shoulder. Master, would you consider giving me a reward? Gu Huayu asked while busying with her work. What do you want? Tell me. Gu Chengwan whispered, I want a skincare product, the kind you gave to your aunt last time. Gu Huayu turned to look at her and said, that's anti-aging. You're so young, you can't use it? It's not for my own use, I use it to give to others. To whom? Gu Huayu asked. Gu Chengwan said vaguely, you don't recognize it, is that okay? Seeing that Gu Chengwan didn't want to say more, Gu Huayu nodded and said, okay, I'll give it to you tomorrow. The group of people played until the time was set and then dispersed. The next day, Gu Huayu was awakened by the urgent cry of honeysuckle. Gu Huayu opened her eyes and saw Lonicera's anxious look and asked, what's wrong? What happened? Princess, Wu Jun from Uncle Mi's side is here to report that in the early hours of this morning, the eldest lady accidentally stepped on her foot when she got up to go to the toilet, and then fell down, as if she had fetal force. Mi Chen is responsible for security affairs at Minjiao Villa. When Gu Huayu heard this, she sat up and said, go and wait outside and let them prepare the car. I'll be out in a minute. Landong nodded in agreement, okay, I'll give you the instructions now. After Lonicero left, Gu Huayu went into the space to get some tools and came out carrying a medical box. Wang Qin asked, Princess, do you want me to go with you? Gu Huayu shook her head, no, you can't help if you go, just stay and do your work. Before getting into the car, Liandong stuffed 2 buns and a jug of water into Gu Huayu's hands. Princess, let's eat on the way. Gu Huayu took it casually and said, okay. Qingyu was driving. It was still early in the morning and there were not many people on the street. He left the city gate smoothly. More than a quarter of an hour after the car left the city, Gu Huayu heard the rapid sound of horse hooves heading this way. Where were these people rushing to go so early in the morning? Gu Huayu had a bad premonition in her heart. She lifted the curtain and looked outside. She said to Wu Jun, we won't take the official road anymore. Let's take the small road instead. Wu Jun looked at Gu Huayu in confusion. Princess, how can the carriage take the narrow road? Gu Huayu jumped out of the car with the medical kit and said to Qingyu, drive the car into the forest, then abandon the car and ride on horseback. Qingyu had long developed the good habit of obeying Gu Huayu's orders. He immediately followed Gu Huayu's instructions and drove the car into the forest. Gu Huayu folded some branches at the edge of the forest to cover the traces of the passing car. Wu Jun and Qingyu dismounted the chariot from the horse together. Gu Huayu walked over and Qingyu handed her the reins of a horse. Princess, you ride this horse. This horse is more docile. Gu Huayu nodded and said, okay. Gu Huayu took the reins, stuffed a bun into the horse's mouth, and patted the horse with his hand. Let's go. After saying that, Gu Huayu got on her horse. Wu Jun asked, Princess, why do we take the small road? The main road is not far away. Qingyu said, why do you ask so many questions? The princess said to take the small road, so we just have to obey. Hearing what Qingyu said, Wu Jun stopped asking any more questions and rode forward to clear the way. The three of them walked halfway up the mountain, and the sound of galloping horse hooves could be heard on the official road. Through the gaps between the trees, you can vaguely see the dark shadows of galloping horses. Wu Jun asked with a panicked face, "Princess, are these people coming for us?" King Yu also looked at Gu Huayu, he also wanted to know the answer. Gu Huayu shook her head, "I don't know. Seeing that they are moving in such a hurry, it's a good idea for us to make way for them. Let's go." The three of them followed the path over the mountain and walked forward for about a quarter of an hour. From a distance, they watched a column of people and horses on the official road go and return. Qing Yu said, "Princess, they seem to be coming for us." Gu Huayu glanced at the people and horses in the distance and said calmly, "Maybe, let's go. Let's go back early and take the back mountain road into Zhuangzi." The three of them walked to the foot of Minjiao Villa, went around the back mountain and entered the village. Mi Shen got the news and rushed over. After seeing the ceremony, he asked, "Did the princess encounter an accident on the road?" Gu Huayu didn't bother to reply to his words, and said as she walked to Gu Jinjiao's yard, "Wu Jun will tell you in detail. Be careful. It's very uneasy outside recently." Gu Huayu walked to the door of Gu Jinjiao's yard and saw Gu Dichang running around in circles in a hurry. Gu Huayu shouted, "Dad!" Gu Dichang turned to look over and breathed a sigh of relief, "Xiao, you are finally here. Hurry up and see your eldest sister." Gu Huayu stepped into the courtyard and saw that the yard was full of people. When everyone saw her, it was like seeing a savior, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. Gu Huayu nodded to everyone and entered the room carrying the medical box. MRS Wang, MRS Wang, and MRS Zhang stayed in the room, while Husan knelt beside the bed, held Wang Qinjiao's hand and burst into tears. Seeing Gu Huayu come in, MRS Wang hurriedly said, "Xiao, please show Cheng Jiao quickly." Gu Huayu stepped forward to check Gu Jinjiao's pulse and said, "Anyang stays here to help, while the others go out and wait. King Yu, put the medical box on the table and take them out." Husan cried and said, "Princess, please let the little one stay, okay?" Gu Huayu didn't have time to persuade him, so she directly ordered, "Qing Yu, take Husan down." Seeing Gu Huayu taking her pulse, MRS Wan asked, "Xiao, how are you doing?" Gu Huayu didn't answer. She took out her stethoscope and listened to the fetal heartbeat. She felt relieved when she saw that the fetal heartbeat was normal. Said, "The child is fine." Gu Chengjiao felt relieved after hearing Gu Huayu's words. "Thank you Xiao, I have a stomachache and thought I had hurt the child." Gu Huayu smiled and comforted, "It's okay, the stomach pain started in advance, and the child was anxious to think out the pain caused by uterine contractions. In a moment, you have to listen to my instructions and we will welcome the arrival of the little one." Gu Chengjiao nodded. "You didn't have breakfast, right?" Gu Huayu asked. Wanqi took over the words, "I was so scared that I forgot about eating." After Gu Huayu checked, she said, "It will be a while before the baby is born. Auntie will go and get some food for the eldest sister first. Let me tell you that the eldest sister is fine and is giving birth normally. Let everyone go back first and don't have to stay outside. When eldest sister gives birth, I will go and tell everyone the good news." Wanqi felt relieved and went out according to Gu Huayu's instructions to let everyone go back first. She also told Malu to bring some food over. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, He Would Fire Every. Chapter 265. Chapter 265 Little Goblin. Gu Huayu waited until the first quarter of the afternoon before Gu Chengjiao gave birth to the child. Lu Ma held the child in her arms and said excitedly, "Miss, you are a master." Gu Chengjiao gave birth to a son. Mother and son were safe, and everyone in the villa was happy. The child was born on the 2nd day of July, and there was a junior high school student at home. Hu-san directly chose the nickname Chu-er, and asked Gu Dichang to choose the first name. Gu Huayu remembered the sound of horse hooves that day and felt uneasy. She asked Mi Chen to strengthen the protection of the villa. She stayed at the villa for a few more days. After seeing that there was no abnormality in the villa, she returned to the city. Gu Huayu returned to Wutong Lane and Lian Dong reported, "Princess, the sixth master came here at Yashi yesterday and learned that the princess went to Zhuangzi and left a message. The princess came back and asked someone to go to the Qing dynasty in Chaijiaping. I'm going to deliver a letter." Gu Huayu washed her hands, took the handkerchief handed over by Lian Dong and wiped it with water, and said, "I understand, is there anything else?" Ling Dong took the handkerchief handed back by Gu Huayu. "Also, Commander Hua has been coming to the mansion to look for the princess in the past few days, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, every day. In addition, Prince Chi's mansion has given the princess I sent the post and put it on the desk." Gu Huayu walked to the desk and saw a gold-gilt name card. Gu Huayu picked up the post and opened it. King Chi made a reservation for the 7th lunar month of July and invited her to go to Penyuan to watch the play. The 7th day of July is tomorrow. She didn't want to go to the theater originally, so on the day of the competition, she deliberately hid her clumsiness and let her lose the competition. After listening to Li Er's words on the way back, she became somewhat interested in Penyuan. Gu Huayu collected the post and said to Lonisara, "I'm going out for a while. I won't be back for lunch." Ling Dong bent his knees and responded, "Okay, Shi Niang told me that the princess cannot go out alone. The princess remembers to take King Zhu, King Yu, and the others with her." The whole family was very worried about Gu Huayu not being followed when she went out. Gu Huayu nodded and said, "Don't worry, I will take King Yu with me." Landong followed Gu Huayu out and said, "Princess, you can bring a few more people with you. Why do you want so many people to follow you? Do you want to show off your power? Just have Qing Yu follow you. Qing Yu is smart and one of them is worth 10. Princess." Gu Huayu came out of her yard and saw King Yu sitting on a chair in the corridor, and ordered, "Get the car ready, let's go out." King Yu stood up and said, "Okay." Gu Huayu turned to Liao Dong and said, "Don't worry, I will protect myself." "All right." After the two of them left the house, King Yu asked, "Princess, where are we going?" Gu Huayu said, "Qingzhou in Chaijiaping." "Okay, I understand," little one Qing Yu responded with a clear voice. After driving for a while, King Yu asked, "Princess, do you think those people were going for us that day?" King Yu has always remembered what happened that day. Gu Huayu lifted the car curtain, stuck her head out of the car and looked back. "I don't know, I'm there too." Before she finished speaking, Gu Huayu saw someone following her car not far or near. "We're being watched." King Yu was about to turn back when Gu Huayu stopped him. "Don't look back, keep going forward." Qin Jiao acted according to his words. "Princess, shall we go to Chaijiaping?" "Go, don't go directly to Chaijiaping, park the car further away, and then walk there." King Yu nodded in agreement. "Okay, the young man will park the car at the Zhouqiao area." "Good." As King Yu drove to Zhouqiao, Gu Huayu poked his head out from time to take a look and saw the two people following him. Princess, Rugjuan, Ruhi, and others are at the entrance of Yufui Yuan restaurant on the right. Gu Huayu raised the car curtain and looked over, and saw Rugjuan Ruhi talking to a tall man standing at the door of the restaurant. "Let's go to Yufui Yuan too, and we'll have dinner here today." King Yu ordered. "Okay." King Yu jumped out of the car and pulled the horse towards Yufui Yuan's yard. Ruhi saw King Yu first and said to Rugjuan, "The princess is here, I will go and report to you." After saying that, Ruhi turned around and entered the house. Rugjuan turned around and saw Qing Yu leading the horse over. He said something to the Qian guards and turned around to greet him. "King Yu, why are you here?" "The princess is in the car." King Yu nodded. The princess said she would like to come to Yuan for dinner. The guard Qian called the waiter to come over and help King Yu park the car, and asked, Master Qian, who is this? Rugjuan introduced, this is Qing Yu who is with Princess Yan Ran. The princess is here for dinner. Qing Yu, this is the Qian guard who is with King Chen. Gu Huayu got down from the carriage, Rugjuan and Qian's guards bowed to Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu repays the gift with blessings. Ru Suanli let Gu Huayu enter the restaurant. It was not time to eat yet, and there were no other customers in the restaurant except the waiters. Gu Huayu entered the restaurant and saw Lu Ziqan and a man wearing a tapestry gown coming towards her. Thinking about it, this was King Chen. When she saw the two of them, Huayu stopped. For some reason, she felt that Lu Ziqan and King Chen were quite similar. Xiao, are you back today? When Lu Ziqan saw Gu Huayu, he stepped forward to greet her, with a look of joy on his brows. In King Chen's impression, Lu Ziqan has always been reserved and steady, a person who does not express emotions or anger. He have never seen Lu Ziqan look so elated. He couldn't help but look at Hua Yanran. Hua Yanran happened to look at him, with a polite smile on her face, and greeted him as a blessing. Wang Chen quickly returned the gift with his hands in hand. Gu Huayu waited for King Chen to return the courtesy, and then went to Lu Ziqan to greet him. King Chen said politely, I have heard about Princess Yan Ran for a long time, and today I finally have a glimpse of her beauty. Princess Yan Ran, please come here. Gu Huayu bowed and thanked her, but did not move. Instead, she raised her head and looked at Lu Ziqan. Lu Ziqan nodded slightly towards her and said, let's go. Gu Huayu Ki and Lu Ziqan walked side by side behind King Chen. Lu Ziqan asked, Mrs. Ping, are Mr. Gu and the others okay? And Miss Gu, are everything okay? Seeing that Lu Ziqan did not avoid King Chen when asking questions, Gu Huayu replied directly, Grandma and father are all fine. The eldest sister had a little trouble on the second day of junior high school, but luckily, the eldest sister gave birth to a son. Mother and son were safe, and the child was very cute. Lu Ziqan raised his eyebrows slightly and said, what a coincidence. He was born in the second grade of junior high school, so he wouldn't be named the second grade of junior high school, right? Gu Huayu turned her head and looked at Lu Ziqan. Lu Ziqan saw the smile on her face and said, I was right. Is it really the second grade of junior high school? Gu Huayu nodded, well, Hu-san insists on taking it this way. He said that from now on, he will let the first grader take care of his younger brother. Dad said it's good, if there is a first grader, then the second grade will be taken care of. King Chen turned around and asked, the first and second days of the lunar month are the names of the children. Lu Ziqan replied, yes, the child of the second brother of the Gu family in the first year of junior high school, and the eldest sister's child in the second year of junior high school. King Chen said, what a special name. Princess Yan Ran, please come to Qinjian. Lu Ziqan politely asked Gu Huayu to step forward. Gu Huayu was not polite and raised her legs to step over the threshold. After entering the house, Gu Huayu saw that the decoration in the house was very unique, unlike an elegant room open to the public. Lu Ziqan saw Gu Huayu's thoughts and said, this restaurant is the prince's property. Wang Chen took the words with a smile, I usually get bored in the mansion, so I came here to sit, so I set aside this room for my own use to pass the time. What kind of tea will Princess Yan Ran drink? Lu Ziqan said, my lord, don't bother me. Just tell her to drink melon slices. As he spoke, Lu Ziqan took a clean cup and poured tea for Gu Huayu. Why did you come here? Lu Ziqan put the poured tea in front of Gu Huayu and asked casually. Gu Huayu reached out to pick up the teacup and sipped the tea, and said, I was originally going to Chaijiaping to look for you. I found someone following me, so I came around here. I didn't expect to see Rugjuan and Ruhi downstairs, so I let them go. King turned the car in. When Luzikin heard that someone was following him, he asked nervously, "Is someone following you? Are you being targeted when you come out of Wutong Lane?" Gu Huayu nodded, "Yes, I have been following him since he came out of Wutong Lane." Luzikin asked, "Have you asked someone to check it?" Gu Huayu shook her head, "I only took Qingyu with me when I went out. Qingyu was driving the car, so I couldn't go and check." Gu Huayu thought about Lonisara's nagging, and it seemed that she would need to take more people with her next time she went out. Seeing Luzikin's face darken, Gu Huayu said hurriedly, "I was in a hurry to go out today and forgot to bring a few more people with me. I promise, I will bring a few more people with me next time. Is this room facing the street?" Gu Huayu looked out the window, turned to look at King Chen, and changed her words. Wang Chen nodded, "Yes, this room faces the street." Gu Huayu said to Luzikin, "You talk to the prince, and I will go see if those who are following you are still there." Luzikin wanted to get up, but Gu Huayu stopped him, "Sit still and don't move. There are many people and it's easy for others to notice. I'll take a look and let Ru Xian and the others go check. Ru Xian, come in for a moment." Luzikin had no choice but to sit and watch Gu Huayu walk to the window. Luzikin withdrew his gaze and looked at King Chen. King Chen was looking at him with inquiring eyes and said, "Xiao treats the capital as a stone city. He doesn't want anyone to follow him when he goes out." King Chen looked at Luzikin with a deeper look in his eyes and asked with a smile, "Qingjian is special to Princess Yan Ran?" Luzikin understood the meaning of King Chen's question, and he did not intend to hide it. He nodded and said, "Yes, Xiao is an old friend and a confidant to me. She is the person I want to protect in the next life." King Chen was just joking. He didn't expect Luzikin to answer very seriously, so he couldn't help but be stunned. Then he smiled and raised his eyebrows, "Princess Yan Ran is so lucky to be so loved by Qingjian. She is also a happy person." Luzikin shook his head and said, "Your Majesty's words are wrong. It is my honor to be recognized by Xiao Yu." King Chen raised his head to look at Gu Huayu by the window, then looked back at Luzikin, "Does my father know your affection for Princess Yan Ran? When will he grant you a marriage?" Luzikin shook his head, "I haven't told the emperor yet. As for asking the emperor to grant a marriage, let's wait until after the scientific examination. Is there a back door here, Your Majesty?" Wang Chen nodded, "Yes, it's almost time to eat. Let's leave after eating." Luzikin said, "Thank you, Your Majesty. I have something to do today, so I will go back first and come back to bother you another day." King Chen nodded and said, "Well, you have just recovered and you still need to have a good rest and don't work too hard. If necessary, feel free to send people to the palace to find me, and I will do my best." Luzikin bowed and thanked, "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your concern." Gu Huayu turned around and saw Luzikin saying goodbye to King Chen, so he walked over and said goodbye to King Chen Fusion. King Chen nodded and said, "I will send you two a gift." Luzikin leaned forward and said, "No need, just let Jishiu take him down." King Chen insisted on seeing him off, but Luzikin said no more. King Chen said, "In order to avoid the spy, you will leave in the restaurant's carriage." Luzikin and Gu Huayu thanked them again. King Chen's people sent Luzikin and Gu Huayu to Qing's guest house and left. The two stood in the backyard and smiled at each other. Luzikin said, "Let's go up." Gu Huayu nodded, "Okay." The two of them went to the study room on the second floor. When they went up the stairs, Luzikin reached out and took Gu Huayu's hand in his. Gu Huayu looked up at Luzikin and saw that Luzikin was looking at her affectionately. Gu Huayu blushed and her heart skipped a beat at his burning eyes, and she lowered her head in panic. The corner of Luzikin's mouth turned up. He took Gu Huayu's hand and went upstairs. He pushed the door into the study and closed the door. Adong pushed Gu Huayu to the door. His right hand still held Gu Huayu's hand, and his left hand came from behind. He hugged her neck and lowered his head to kiss Gu Huayu. Luzikin's series of movements were so smooth that Gu Huayu couldn't react for a moment. Of course, Gu Huayu was also slightly stunned. After all, there was a 30-year-old modern soul living in his body. Then he followed his heart and responded enthusiastically. After a while of lingering, Luzikin let go of Gu Huayu and said warmly, "Little guy, I miss you." Gu Huayu nodded, stood on tiptoes and kissed Luzikin, and replied softly and boldly, "I know, I miss you too." Gu Huayu's words were like sparks, igniting the suppressed passion in Luzikin's heart. He held Gu Huayu's face with both hands and kissed her as if he were treasure. Gu Huayu put her arms around Luzikin's waist, hugging him tightly and imitating his way of responding to him. Luzikin felt Gu Huayu's enthusiasm, and felt ecstatic in his heart. The most beautiful thing in the world is to know that the person you put at the top of your heart also puts you at the top of her heart. Love that goes both ways is the most intoxicating. There was a longer lingering moment when Gu Huayu thought she was going to suffocate. Luzikin let go of her. Gu Huayu leaned against the door, Luzikin hugged her tightly. Neither of them spoke, they just looked at each other quietly, seeing themselves in each other's eyes, calming down the waves of emotions that were rising in their hearts. Luzikin raised his hand and touched Gu Huayu's slightly red and swollen lips. Just as he was about to speak, a sound like a shrine sounded outside the door. "It's almost time to eat. I'm going to ask the master and the princess what they want to eat." Luzikin lowered his head and kissed Gu Huayu's red swollen lips, and whispered to Gu Huayu, "I don't want to eat anything, I just want to hold you like this." Gu Huayu didn't say anything. She turned her head and bit Luzikin's earlobe. Luzikin was startled and turned his head to look at Gu Huayu, who winked at him. Luzikin whispered, "You little goblin." Outside the door, Ruhi grabbed Rugjuan and said, "You idiot, I'm afraid you don't want to go to Longzi to accompany our Yuan." Luzikin was stunned, looked at Gu Huayu, and pricked up his ears to listen to the sounds outside. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 266. Chapter 266 Commitment. As soon as Ruhin heard that he was going to Longzi, he asked nervously, "What's wrong? What did I do wrong?" Ruhi's disgusted voice sounded again, "Why do you act like a fool? How do you work as an errand beside me when you have no sharp eyesight at all?" Rug was a little annoyed. He raised his hand and patted Rug and said, "Let go and talk properly. It's not like you don't know that I am upright, just like you, I have a delicate heart. We grew up together and served the same master. I couldn't think of anything, but you have thought of it. What would happen if you remind me?" Ruhi said, "Well, you didn't expect it, but you are still reasonable. Listen carefully, I and the master haven't seen each other for several days, right?" Yan nodded and said, "Isn't this obvious?" Ruhi continued, "Then haven't you seen that I have been restless these past few days, staring at my eyes, and looking listless day by day? Look again at how energetic and radiant I was when I saw the master in Yufui Yuan. Didn't you notice anything about the changes before and after my father?" Yan asked dully, "What can you see?" Ruhi looked at the sky speechlessly, "You piece of wood, I don't know what to say to you. Let me tell you this, right now, I just want to talk to the master, so let's not disturb them. But, it's time to eat, aren't you hungry just talking? Why doesn't this make sense to you? I mean, I don't care what I eat right now, we just need to prepare food according to my usual taste. No, just prepare it according to the master's taste." "Why are they prepared according to the princess's taste?" Yan was confused again. Because the master is someone I care about. Alas, I can't explain it to you, Ruhi said with a tired heart. Jin said, why can't I make sense? I mean, why don't you prepare it according to the taste of the master and the princess? You are right, just prepare it according to the taste of me and the master. What does the princess like to eat? Rug thought for a while and said, master's taste is too strong, almost as good as mine. You go to the kitchen and ask the cook to cook some spicy and fragrant Sichuan dishes. I'll be waiting here. If master has any orders, I'll be here to answer them. Okay, I'll go then. Luzikin bent down and picked up Gu Huayu, and walked to the soft couch. As he walked, he said, Ruhi has a delicate mind and has a bright future. Ruhi is stupid and dull. Do you want to punish him to live in Longzi for a while? Gu Huayu shook her head, forget it, you'd better let him stay with you. Luzikin sat down with Gu Huayu in his arms and asked, why? Gu Huayu leaned in Luzikin's arms, let a stupid person teach people, and why don't you teach a bunch of stupid people? Luzikin laughed out loud, that makes sense, so let's keep him by your side and don't let him harm others. Gu Huayu nodded seriously, yes, that's the truth. Luzikin raised his hand and rubbed Gu Huayu's head, little guy, have you missed me these days? Gu Huayu glanced at Luzikin coquettishly, guess. Lvizikin lowered his head and pressed it against Gu Huayu's forehead, I don't want to guess. I want you to tell me. I want to hear it from your own mouth. Luzikin's magnetic voice fell on Gu Huayu's heart, making her extremely fascinated. She couldn't help but said, Qinjian, I like to be with you, I like to listen to you speak, and I like to look at you like this. Gu Huayu followed her heart and said whatever she thought in her heart. But her unexpected confession made Luzikin stunned, and then he hugged her tightly, little guy, I am too. I have been thinking about you so much these days that I have almost gone crazy. If you hadn't let me lie in bed for 10 days, I would have gone to find you. Is you? Gu Huayu nestled in Luzikin's arms and said quietly, I wanted to come back earlier. The day I went to Zhuangzi, there was a group of people following me. In order to get rid of that group of people, King Yu and I abandoned the official road and took the small road. Go to Zhuangzi. Gu Huayu's intuition has always been very accurate. When she heard the rapid sound of horse hooves, she felt that the group was heading for her. A few days later, when she thought about what happened that day, she still firmly believed in her original judgment. Upon hearing this, Luzikin sat up straight and said seriously, a whole group of people are following you to Zhuangzi? Approximately how many people are there? Gu Huayu nodded, yes, there are about 10 or 20 people. Luzikin asked, who can know your whereabouts and mobilize so many people at once? Who is this person? From the Hua family? From the British Duke? Or from the Prime Minister's palace? Gu Huayu shook her head, it hasn't been found out. It's not clear yet. I was worried that something might happen to Zhuangzi, so I stayed in Zhuangzi for a few more days. It's possible for these families. Luzikin nodded, when you come back, where is Zhuangzi? Have you made arrangements? The people living on Zhuangzi are the people Gu Huayu cares about, and they are Gu Huayu's weakness. Gu Huayu nodded and said, additional manpower has been sent to Zhuangzi. Uncle Mi is stationed there. I will send Uncle Ruanwu over later. Zhuangzi should be fine. If it is an enemy, their target is me. I am not in Zhuangzi, and their attention should follow me to the city. Maybe, the people following me today are the same group of people that day. Luzikin frowned slightly and said, it's possible, let's wait for Rugjuan to come back and see how his investigation goes. Xiao, you must take more people with you when you go out. Luzikin looked at Gu Huayu with worry and concern in his eyes. Gu Huayu raised her hand and touched his brow, don't worry, I'm very alert, they can't hurt me, I will protect myself. Luzikin smoothly held Gu Huayu's hand, but we are in the light, the enemy is in the dark, and the swords and arrows are ruthless. What if I hurt you? What do you want me to do if something happens to you? Gu Huayu raised her head, kissed Lu Ziqin, and said comfortingly, "Don't worry, the soldiers will cover up the water and the earth. I promise you, I will protect myself and never let anything happen to me. By the way, do you know Huarujun?" Gu Huayu didn't want Lu Ziqin to worry, so she quickly changed the subject. "Huarujun? Huasu's eldest son? Why are you asking about him?" Lu Ziqin asked with a frown. Gu Huayu nodded and told Lu Ziqin about Huaruiming taking her to the gambling house. After hearing this, Lu Ziqin's face darkened. "Huaruiming actually took you to the gambling house?" "The gambling house is a mixed bag of people, and there are all kinds of people. It's so chaotic. How can you go to the gambling house with him?" Gu Huayu tilted her head and looked at Lu Ziqin, and whispered, "Are you angry? I dressed up as a man. If I had not gone to the gambling house, I would not have known that Huarujun was the owner of the gambling house and the current situation of Long Shadow Guard. Right? Qinjian, do you know Huarujun?" Lu Ziqin shook his head. "I don't know, I just know that he is the eldest son of Huasu's concubine, and his biological mother seems to be a prostitute. Huasu was a womanizer when she was young and liked to go to places like Fireworks Alley and Liuliu. In this regard, Huaruiming is very similar to Huasu. Huaruiming's mother Lu is Mrs. Li's cousin, and Mrs. Li is my second aunt. It was Mrs. Li who single-handedly facilitated the marriage between Lu and Huasu. Wait a minute. I'll let Ruhi come in. I'll ask him about the affairs of the Hua family. He should know." Gu Huayu immediately sat up straight and said, "Qinjian, wait a minute, I'll clean up first." Gu Huayu took out the cosmetic bag she carried with her and applied light makeup on herself to cover up her slightly red and swollen mouth. She looked in the mirror and felt satisfied before saying, "Okay, let Ruhi come in bar." Gu Huayu's movements made Lu Ziqin's eyes light up. He liked the way she was casual in front of him and didn't treat him as an outsider. Lu Ziqin pinched the tip of Gu Huayu's nose, nodded with satisfaction and said, "Okay." After saying that, Lu Ziqin raised his voice and shouted, "Here comes someone." Ruhi pushed open the door and came in. He lowered his hand and asked, "Sir, Master." Lu Ziqin said, "How much do you know about Huasu's eldest son Huarujun? Tell me what you know." Ruhi leaned over and said, "Okay, Huarujun was born to Huasu and a brothel girl named Yuniang. After Mrs. Lu married into the Hua mansion, she found some excuse to send Yuniang out. Huasu arranged for Yuniang to live in the Bayakangman area behind Liu's back. Huarujun is diligent and studious, and the people around Huasu treat him well. His martial arts was taught by Chen Liang, making him good at swordsmanship. After Huasu died, the Lu family expelled Huarujun and Huaruki from the Hua mansion. Huarujun took Huaruki to live at the residence of his biological mother Yuniang in Bayakangman. These years, Huarujun opened gambling houses, carriage houses, tea houses, and cloth shops in the capital one after another. That's all the young man knew. Lu Ziqin nodded, "I understand, go down." Ruhi took the opportunity to ask, "Sir, Master, the food is ready, do you want to pass on the dishes?" Lu Ziqin and Gu Huayu looked at each other. Lu Ziqin pursed his lips and said, "Pass it on." Ruhi didn't know why Lu Ziqin was laughing, but after hearing Lu Ziqin's suggestion of passing on the dishes, he happily agreed, "Okay, please wait a minute, I'll arrange for the dishes to be passed on." Rug retreats. After a while, Ruhi came in carrying a food box. After setting the food, the two of them left out knowingly. Gu Huayu came out of the bathroom. Lu Ziqin waved and said, "Xiao, come here quickly, you like it?" Gu Huayu walked over and saw that there were palace-baked kidney flowers, 5-leaf fish, boiled meat slices, and a plate of fried vegetables on the table. Gu Huayu swallowed her saliva and said, "The chef's skills are good, and the dishes are well presented and very appetizing." Lu Ziqin put the fish with the bones removed into Gu Huayu's bowl. "Try the fish, it tastes good." Gu Huayu picked up the chopsticks, lowered her head and started eating. "The fish meat is very tender, very flavorful and delicious," Gu Huayu nodded while eating. Lu Ziqin lowered his head and continued to pick the fish bones, and then put the fish meat into Gu Huayu's bowl. "If it tastes good, eat more." Gu Huayu picked up a handful of fish meat and handed it to Lu Ziqin's mouth. "Ah, open your mouth." Lu Ziqin took one look at the fish and said, "You eat it?" "Ah, open your mouth." Lu Ziqin looked at Gu Huayu and saw that she insisted, so he opened his mouth to catch the fish. Seeing Lu Ziqin eating it, Gu Huayu smiled and arched her eyebrows. "How is it? Is it delicious?" Lu Ziqin nodded fondly. "It's delicious. What Xiao feeds is the best." Gu Huayu took a piece of kidney flour and sent it over. "Here, take another bite." Lu Ziqin obediently opened his mouth to catch it, nodded and said, "It's delicious." Gu Huayu fed Lu Ziqin a few pieces of kidney flour one after another. "Then eat more. Eat whatever you eat to make up for it. It will be good for you." Lu Ziqin put down his chopsticks, stretched out his hand to pinch Gu Huayu's chin, and asked Gu Huayu to face him. "Little guy, do you dare to say that my waist is not good?" Gu Huayu looked at Lu Ziqin, shook her head and said, "No, I mean my waist is not good." Lu Ziqin said with a straight face, "You know a lot at a young age." "Huh." Gu Huayu replied, "Of course, I am a doctor. Don't you understand this?" Lu Ziqin stared at Gu Huayu and asked, "What else do you know?" Gu Huayu blurted out, "It depends on what you want to know." After saying that, Gu Huayu suddenly felt that the conversation was wrong and quickly changed the subject. "Eat quickly, the food will not taste good when it is cold." Lu Ziqin's hand didn't let go and he said, "Should I marry you as soon as possible and then let's discuss whether the waist is good or not?" Gu Huayu said hurriedly, "Don't be serious, I just made a slip of the tongue and changed the story. This time is over, let's eat." Lu Ziqin let go of his hand and picked up the fish bones with his chopsticks again. Gu Huayu said, "Qinjian, you eat too, don't just pick the fish bones for me." Lv Ziqin put the fish meat into Gu Huayu's bowl. "I like the fish meat prepared for you, so that as long as you eat fish, you will miss me." Gu Huayu was so moved by his earthy words of love that she said, "Qinjian, you will spoil me." Lu Ziqin said seriously, "That's right. This is what I want to do in this life. I will do my best to pamper you until you can't live without me." Just as Gu Huayu was about to pounce, a sound like a shrine sounded at the door. "Master, stewed pigeon soup can nourish the liver and kidneys, replenish qi and blood, clear away heat and detoxify. It's the best day to drink it." Rumo walked over quickly carrying a bowl of soup, put the soup bowl on the table, swung his hands, grabbed his ears and jumped. "Oh, it's too hot." Gu Huayu stood up and asked, "Let me see if you're burned." Ruhi came in and pulled Ruhi out. "It's okay, it's okay." "Master, use it slowly, master, use it slowly. Just show him the little one." After Ruhi stepped back, the previous ambiguous atmosphere also dissipated. Lu Ziqin gave Gu Huayu a bowl of soup to cool down. The two of them finished their meal quietly and sat aside to drink tea while Ruhi brought someone in to clean up. Gu Huayu thought about going to Penyuan to listen to the opera tomorrow. She raised her head and said to Lu Ziqin, "Qinjian, I will go to Penyuan to listen to the opera tomorrow." Lu Ziqin paused, looked up at Gu Huayu, and asked, "Going to Penyuan to listen to the opera? Do you like to listen to the opera? When did you book the tickets for Penyuan? With whom?" "Miss Shi-san." Gu Huayu nodded and told the story of King Qi's invitation from beginning to end. After hearing this, Lu Ziqin's expression suddenly changed and he asked, "Xiao, If I don't want you to go, will you care about my feelings and not go? However, I sent someone to the Prince's mansion to reply, saying that he would arrive on time tomorrow and that he had already promised to others. There was no expression on Luzikin's face, and he said calmly, "So, you have to go, right?" Gu Huayu nodded mechanically and explained, "I should keep my promise when I promise something to others, right?" Luzikin nodded, lowered his head and drank all the tea in the cup. Then he said to Gu Huayu, "It's getting late. I'll have someone take you back." End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the Lucky Girl from a Farm Family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 267. Chapter 267 Angry. Kinjian. Come here. The two of them spoke at the same time. Gu Huayu looked at Luzikin, "You." Ruhi opened the door and came in, "Sir, what are your orders?" Luzikin stood up and said calmly, "It's getting late. Send the princess back." Seeing the tense atmosphere in the room, Ruhi looked at Luzikin and then at Gu Huayu. "What are you doing? Didn't you hear me?" Luzikin looked at Ruhi with a straight face, and his tone was much heavier. Gu Huayu didn't know why Luzikin was suddenly angry. She hated his behavior of neither giving explanations nor listening to explanations from others. Suddenly, an unknown fire rose from the bottom of Gu Huayu's heart. "No need to send him off, I can find my way back by myself." After saying that, Gu Huayu walked out. Ruhi hurriedly followed. Gu Huayu stopped and stared at Ruhi, saying word by word, "I told you, there is no need to send it away." Rug lowered his hands in embarrassment and whispered, "Master. I'm not your master. From now on, you don't have to come over." Gu Huayu turned around and left quickly. Ruhi rushed to catch up. Seeing Ruhi following him, Gu Huayu became even more angry. She turned around and threw a silver needle at Ruhi. Ruhi never dreamed that Gu Huayu would attack him. When he saw the silver needle flying towards him, he could not avoid it, and the silver needle pierced him accurately. Ruhi immediately felt that his limbs were weak, and then he collapsed to the ground. Gu Huayu stepped forward and pulled out the silver needle and said, "Lie here and don't move. It will return to normal in a quarter of an hour." Luzikin looked at Gu Huayu in shock. "Xiao." Gu Huayu interrupted Luzikin, "It's getting late, I'm going back." Without waiting for Luzikin to speak again, Gu Hua language quickly walked out of the house. The whirlwind rushed downstairs, and then ran out of the streets where from passengers rushed into people. Luzikin chased him to the door of Qingkeju. Where could he see Gu Huayu? Rujin happened to come from the kitchen and saw Luzikin standing at the door and asked, "Sir, what are you doing?" Luzikin hurriedly ordered, "Hurry and prepare the car." Rumo didn't know what was going on. "Okay, don't worry, I'll drive over right now." Luzikin craned his neck to look at the street. Ruyan came back very quickly, "Master, get in the car." "Where are we going? Where is the princess?" Luzikin got into the car but was dumbfounded. He didn't know which direction Huayan Ran was going. Luzikin hesitated and said, "Go to Wutong Lane." Behind the scenes, Rujin realized that something was wrong and wanted to ask, but was afraid that he would ask the wrong thing and didn't know what to do. Rishi was driving the car without squinting, so much so that he missed Gu Huayu walking on the left. Luzikin was sitting in the car, looking to the right and to the left. When he looked to the left, a tall man happened to block Gu Huayu's figure. Gu Huayu was extremely depressed, and a strong sense of loneliness hit her. She didn't want to bring this bad mood home and make the people around her worry about her, so she simply wandered on the street, with Luzikin's indifferent and distant look in her mind. Gu Huayu couldn't understand that the person who wanted to spoil her while eating would turn to her with a cold face the next second. "Is there anything you can't say well? Do you have to shame others?" Gu Huayu was not familiar with the streets of Beijing. She turned left and right on the street and turned around. She was tired and lost, and she didn't know where she was. She wanted to find an inn to sleep in and go back later. Gu Huayu walked and searched for it. She walked 2 streets and didn't see the inn. Gu Huayu stood on the street and looked around, then walked towards the woman selling hair flowers not far away. "Auntie, is there an inn nearby?" The woman looked at her and asked, "Is this a foreigner? This is your first time in the capital." Gu Huayu didn't want to explain more. Whatever the woman asked, she said yes. The woman pointed to the front left and said, "There is a cozy inn there." Gu Huayu looked in the direction of the woman's finger and saw 2 lanterns hanging above the door of a house, with the word warmth written on them. Gu Huayu frowned slightly and asked, "Are there any larger inns?" The woman said, "There is no one on this street. If you want to find a bigger inn, you have to go out of the street and turn to Fenghe Road. There is the largest Xianghe Inn in the south of our city." Gu Huayu took out a piece of silver and handed it to the woman as a reward. The woman took the money in surprise and then bowed to thank her. Gu Huayu turned onto Fenghe Road and saw the Xianghe Inn on the opposite side. Gu Huayu went into the inn and asked for a room, then entered the room and fell asleep. On the other side, Lu Ziqin searched all the way to Wutong Lane, but did not see Gu Huayu. When the concierge saw Lulu, he immediately went in to report. King Yu and King Zhu were talking on the veranda. After hearing the report from the concierge, they immediately went to the door. Lu Ziqin saw the 2 people coming out and asked, "Xiao Yu didn't come back?" Upon hearing what Lu Ziqin said, Qing Yu became anxious. "Didn't the princess leave Yufui Yuan restaurant with Mr. Lu?" Lu Ziqin replied apologetically, "I'm sorry, I made Xiao angry, and she left alone." "Leave alone? How could Mr. Lu let the princess leave alone?" Qing Yu blamed him and walked out. King Zhu raised his voice and asked, "King Yu, where are you going?" King Yu replied as he walked, "Go find the princess." King Zhu bowed to Lu Ziqin and said, "The princess has not come back. I have to go find the princess, so I won't leave the 6th master here. Please help yourself, the 6th master." After saying that, King Zhu turned back to the courtyard and summoned people in the mansion to look for the person. Ru Jin turned around and left King Zhu, looked back at Lu Ziqin, and asked, "Sir, what should we do?" Lu Ziqin said, "Go back along the original road to find him. Go around to Chang'an restaurant and ask everyone to go out and look for him." Jin I. Ru Yan was full of questions and couldn't help but ask, "Didn't the master and the princess have a good time when they had dinner? Why did he make the princess angry?" Lu Ziqin did not sit in the carriage, but sat at the front of the carriage with Ru, looking at the pedestrians coming and going, hoping for that familiar figure in the crowd. Seeing that his master was sullen and silent, Rumo didn't dare to ask any more questions. When Gu Huayu woke up, it was already Yushi. "Get up, tidy up, go to the front desk to check out and leave. When you walk out of the inn, the streets are already filled with lights." Gu Huayu walked along the street and unknowingly wandered near the grilled fish shop where Lu Ziqin brought her. Gu Huayu saw a stall selling wood carving pendants. She stepped forward to look at the pendants on the wooden shelf and saw a clumsy cow among the pile of pendants. The stall owner's craftsmanship is average, and the pendants he carves are always a little bit spiritual. The stall owner looked up and saw Gu Huayu, put down the carving knife in his hand, stood up and greeted, "Girl is here, what are you selling now?" Gu Huayu cast her eyes on the stall owner and asked, "Do you remember me, old man?" The stall owner smiled and nodded, I remember, of course I remember. The girl bought a calf and a bunny last time. Did the girl come alone this time? Didn't the young man come with us?" Gu Huayu pursed her lips and replied, "I'll go out alone for a walk." The stall owner is a thoughtful person. He felt a hint of reluctance in Gu Huayu's smile and said with a smile, "What? The young couple had a quarrel?" Gu Huayu smiled and shook her head, I was just bored, so I went out for a walk. Is the old man preparing to carve a dog? The stall owner looked down at the wooden carving in his hand and nodded, yes, you girl has good eyesight. I'm going to carve a puppy. Gu Huayu saw someone coming over and said, old man, please do some business. Give this to me and I will carve it for you. The stall owner was surprised, can a girl know this? After saying that, the stall owner handed the wood in his hand to Gu Huayu. Thank you for your hard work, girl. Gu Huayu took the wood and carving knife, sat down under the lamp and started working. The stall owner glanced at Gu Huayu while greeting the customers. He was worried that the carving knife would hurt her hand. Later, I saw that she moved skillfully and lowered her head to focus on the work at hand, so the stall owner felt at ease to greet the customers. The puppy is already a semi-finished product. Gu Huayu only made some micro carvings. She trimmed and trimmed it. It took more than half an hour to modify, and a soft and cute puppy was completed. Gu Huayu returned the puppy and carving knife to the stall owner. When the stall owner saw the puppy, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he praised repeatedly, the girl's craftsmanship is amazing, she is like the reincarnation of Lu Ban. Gu Huayu leaned forward and said, I'm sorry, I'm just playing for fun, how dare I compare with old man Lu Ban. The stall owner gave Gu Huayu money. Gu Huayu bowed and stepped away quickly. Then she bowed to the stall owner, raised her hand and said, thank you, old man. I wish you a prosperous business. See you soon. Gu Huayu walked along the T-shaped road and saw an open space on the roadside. There were 6 small tables on the open space, and a sign was erected on the outside. Seeing the words Wine Lee's Meatballs, Gu Huayu suddenly felt a little hungry, so she walked to the innermost table and sat down, asking for a bowl of Wine Lee's Meatballs. Gu Huayu sat inside. While waiting, she propped her head on her hands and looked at the people around her. The stall owners are a couple. One holds the spoon and the other holds the bowl. They each perform their own duties but work together in perfect harmony. Girl, your Wine Lee's balls, said the woman. Gu Huayu nodded, okay, put it here. Gu Huayu stirred it with a spoon, lowered her head and started eating. Slow down, be careful, a magnetic and familiar voice sounded around me. Gu Huayu's hand shook, and the spoon fell into the bowl. The grievances that had been suppressed for most of the day rushed out of her heart like a flood that had opened a floodgate. Gu Huayu put down the spoon and prepared to get up and leave. Upon seeing this, Lu Zikan immediately reached out and took Gu Huayu's hand. Xiao, I'm sorry. It's my fault today. I apologize to you and forgive me, okay? Gu Huayu turned her head to the side, took a deep breath, and said lightly, let go. Lu Zikan held his hand tighter and said, don't let go. I searched for most of the day before I found you. Gu Huayu struggled and said, let go, I don't know whether men and women are intimate or not. I don't care. If others gossip, I will go to the palace tomorrow to ask the emperor for marriage. Gu Huayu turned around and looked at Lu Zikan, enter the palace to ask the emperor for marriage. How funny. Did I say I wanted to marry you? Lu Zikan's eyes darkened, if you don't marry me, who are you going to marry? This is my business, I don't need to worry about it. You said it lightly. My heart is with you. You want me not to worry about it? Don't even think about it. Gu Huayu glared at Lu Zikan. Lu Zikan blinked at Gu Huayu and pouted, little guy, don't be angry, okay? I know I was wrong. You sir, please forgive me, okay? Or, I can imitate a puppy's bark. Woof, woof, woof. Woof woof. Speaking, Lu Zikan really started barking like a puppy. Gu Huayu didn't expect him to come as soon as he said he was coming. She looked around in fright and saw that the stall owner and his wife had left, and Ru Xian, Ru Jin, and others had their backs turned to them. Apparently, the others had been asked to leave. Xiao, Luzikin took Gu Huayu's hand and acted coquettishly. Let go, I'm hungry. Luzikin was about to say no, but after hearing the last sentence, he immediately let go and said, okay, I'll feed you, okay. With that said, Luzikin was about to reach out to pick up the bowl. Gu Huayu took the first step and pressed the bowl with her hand. No, I will do it myself. Luzikin said, I'm hungry too, then you feed me. Gu Huayu pretended not to hear, ignored him, lowered her head and ate her own food. Luzikin then said, Xiao, I'm hungry, can you feed me a bite? Gu Huayu finally relented and pushed the bowl in front of Luzikin, eat it yourself. Luzikin sat still, his hands were weak, he had no strength, and he couldn't pick up the spoon. Gu Huayu rolled her eyes at Luzikin. Luzikin raised his hand and said, Xiaoyu, look, I really don't have any strength. Gu Huayu glanced at Luzikin's hand and saw that his hand seemed to be broken and hanging limply. She was shocked and immediately reached out to hold it and asked, can't you use any strength? Luzikin tried to use more force, it seems to be better now and I can use more force. Just now, this hand didn't seem to be mine. Gu Huayu looked at the looming Qingfeng and roughly understood what was going on. Gu Huayu squeezed Luzikin's hand and asked, what now? Are you feeling better? Luzikin clenched his fists and said, well, I've recovered. Xiao, what's wrong with me? I've never encountered this situation before. Gu Huayu said nonsense, maybe your posture just now was wrong and hurt the meridians. Are you still eating? Luzikin nodded and said, eat, let's take a bite each, okay. Luzikin picked up the bowl, took a bite himself, then reached over to feed Gu Huayu a mouthful. Gu Huayu reached out to take the bowl, and Luzikin moved his hand to the side. No hands, just open your mouth. Seeing his insistence, Gu Huayu had no choice but to open her mouth and accept. Luzikin's face immediately showed a small smile, be good. Gu Huayu didn't want to be embarrassed in public, so she said, this is the street, it's terrible, eat it quickly and leave. Luzikin looked around and said, it doesn't matter, others don't know us. Gu Huayu looked at Rugjuan and the others, you have organized such a big battle, and others still don't know about it. There are so many rich kids in the capital, who knows who the two of us are, but I listen to you, eat and leave as soon as possible. After Luzikin finished speaking, he took 2 bites. Then he brought the bowl to Gu Huayu's mouth and fed her the rest. Gu Huayu stood up and asked, where is the car parked? Luzikin stood up and said, are you still hungry? I'll take you to have something to eat. Gu Huayu shook her head, no need, I'm going back. Well, let's go Rugjuan, go catch the car. Rugjuan quickly pulled the car over. Gu Huayu got in first, followed by Luzikin. Before Luzikin could sit firmly, Qing Yu's voice sounded outside the car, Princess, the young one is here to pick you up. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 268. Chapter 268 Frankness. Luzikin was the first to say, I'll send Xiao back. King Yu was dissatisfied with Luzikin. As if he didn't hear Luzikin's words, he said again, Princess, the young one is here to pick you up. Gu Huayu wanted to get up, but Luzikin immediately put his arms around Gu Huayu and pressed his face against Gu Huayu's back. Xiao, let me see you off, okay. Luzikin's almost pleading voice made Gu Huayu's heart ache. She could only bully the people she loved most, and no one else could. Gu Huayu sat back down again and said in a deep voice, Sixth Master said he would see me off. I'll take Sixth Master's car back. King Yu bowed and stepped back. Luzikin held Gu Huayu in his arms, lowered his head and kissed her. Gu Huayu's words were blocked in her mouth. After a while, Gu Huayu sat up straight and asked, have you been looking for me all afternoon? Luzikin nodded, I chased you after you went out. You ran too fast. I didn't see you when I chased you, so I immediately asked Ru Yan to drive towards Wuotong Lane and chase me. I didn't see you until I reached Wuotong Lane. Xiao, let's agree that from now on, no matter what, don't leave alone, okay? I will be worried if you leave alone, everyone is worried. Lu Ziqin hugged Gu Huayu and thought about wandering through the streets and alleys with his heart hanging. In one afternoon, he searched almost all over the capital. He was frightened by disappointment again and again, and now he still has lingering fears. Lu Ziqin didn't dare to think about what he would do if something happened to Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu could feel Lu Ziqin's worry from his slightly trembling body. He nodded and said, "Before I promise you, tell me why you are angry today." Lu Ziqin remained silent. Seeing that he was silent, Gu Huayu asked, "Are you angry because Li Tao and I went to dinner? Are you jealous? I didn't go alone with Li Tao. Wasn't Yamei accompanying me? Besides, you know, I treat Li Tao the same as I treat Yamei. Li Tao is just my best friend, so you really don't need to be jealous of him." Lu Ziqin still didn't speak. Gu Huayu tilted her head to look at Lu Ziqin, stretched out her hand and waved it in front of his eyes. "Qingjian, why don't you speak?" Lu Ziqin held Gu Huayu's hand and sighed slightly. Gu Huayu took her hand out of Lu Ziqin's and said seriously, "Qingjian, if we want to get along with each other for a long time, we have to make some things clear first. Otherwise, things like today will be difficult to do again in the future. Avoid." Perhaps it was the experience of several lifetimes that made Gu Huayu feel that life was too unpredictable. In her previous life, she only had a short period of 15 years and died before leaving Shangtai village. In modern times, God gave her more than 20 years. She worked hard to make progress and studied diligently, and finally achieved success in her studies. However, she left her parents before she could honor them. In this life, she doesn't know how long God will let her stay here. Facing the unknown and uncontrollable future, she felt extremely frightened and helpless. There was very little she could do. She can only live in the present and live her life well, trying her best to make arrangements for those who love her and those she loves. In this way, even if she wakes up one day and is in another time and space, she won't have too many regrets. Lu Ziqin nodded and reached out to hold Gu Huayu's hand again. This time, Gu Huayu did not break free and let him hold her. "Qingjian, life is short, and there are many uncertainties in life. Since we are in love, we should live every day well and make every day sweet instead of spending time on doubts, suspicions, and quarrels. In this way, if one day we have to separate, one person can spend the rest of his life with those sweet memories." Gu Huayu still expressed her inner worries. Lu Ziqin's hand stopped, and he held Gu Huayu's hand tightly and said hoarsely, "Xiao, I don't want to live the rest of my life relying on memories. You are not allowed to leave me." Gu Huayu smiled bitterly, "Life is impermanent. Or, when I wake up, I will no longer be in this world." "Bah, bah, 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 hurry up, Xiao, such a joke is not funny at all." "Don't tell such jokes," Lu Ziqin said seriously. After saying that, Lu Ziqin hugged Gu Huayu tightly in his arms, for fear that if he let go, Gu Huayu would disappear. Gu Huayu felt wetness on her neck, and her heart suddenly hurt. Lu Ziqin said, "In the days to come, we will trust each other and be honest with each other. I will tell you whatever is on my mind. Today I am angry, not with you, nor with Li Tao, but with King Qi. No, I'm not angry with King Qi, I'm angry with myself." Lu Ziqin didn't want to say these words. Since he said he should be honest, he should keep his word. Gu Huayu looked up at Lu Ziqin and asked, "Did King Qi have any issues with you?" Lu Ziqin shook his head and said, "There is no holiday between me and the King of Qi. Because I am a member of the British government, and because of the Emperor's favor, I have been the virtuous king's companion since I was a child, and I have always defended the virtuous king. He sees me as a stumbling block to his rise to power, and I am a thorn in the side of King Qi and Huaqing Palace. When I was assassinated in Shishan, the first group of people were those from Huaqing Palace. Over the years, King Qi and Huaqing Palace have never stopped attacking me. I have a great destiny. Shishan's life was hanging by a thread that time. You pulled me back from the hands of the King of Hell. Later on, I took precautions, and their plans failed again and again, and they never succeeded. Gu Huayu suddenly thought of Lu Ziqan's expression that morning and asked, "You don't want me to go to Penyuan to listen to the opera, are you worried that the Qi dynasty will attack me?" Lu Ziqan looked down at Gu Huayu, hesitated, and said, "Yes, I'm more worried that he is interested in you." Gu Huayu asked doubtfully, "How do you say this? What does he care about me?" Lu Ziqan said, "Among the princes, King Qi is the elder. He has always regarded himself as the eldest son of the emperor. He is extremely self-disciplined and conceited. He is a person who will never give up until he achieves his goal. Every person or thing that the king of Qi likes must be used by him. Otherwise, he will destroy it. This is why he doesn't tolerate me. Therefore, I don't want you to go to Penyuan to listen to the opera, and I don't want you to spend too much time with the king of Qi. First of all, I'm worried that King Qi will know about our relationship and he will hurt you. Secondly, you are too dazzling, and I am afraid that King Qi will take a fancy to you and pester you. I'm afraid that he will you away." Ziqan did not want to see these two results. Gu Huayu pursed her lips and smiled, "Are you not confident in yourself or in me? In your eyes, am I the kind of person who has different ideas and loves vanity? You have so little confidence in our feelings." Although Gu Huayu said it with a smile, there was no hint of smile in her words. Lu Ziqan hurriedly explained, "No, Xiao, listen to me. It's not that I don't have confidence in our relationship. We are both principled and bottom-line people. Since they identify each other, they will definitely be loyal to each other. You don't understand King Qi, he is a man who will do anything to get what he wants. I'm afraid he will hurt you." Gu Huayu tilted her head, leaned on Lu Ziqan's shoulder, and said softly, "Don't worry, no matter how many people want to hurt me in this world, I am not afraid, because they can't hurt me. There is only one person in this world who can hurt me. Do you know who this person is?" Lu Ziqan looked sideways at Gu Huayu and asked, "Who?" Gu Huayu poked Lu Ziqan's chest with her hand and said, "You. If anyone in this world can hurt me, it's only you." Lu Ziqan laughed and said, "What a joke. How could I hurt you? How could I be willing to hurt you?" Gu Huayu smiled and said, "So, no one in this world can hurt me. Qinjian, don't worry about me." Lu Ziqan shook his head, "You are too young and not deeply involved in the world. You have grown up with care and love, and everything you come into contact with is beautiful. You don't understand the sinister nature of people's hearts. If I guess correctly, King Qi is already interested in you. Otherwise, he would not beg Panjunian to play a role." Gu Huayu sat up straight and said seriously, "Qinjian, are you sure that King Qi invited everyone to Penyuan to listen to the opera because of me?" Ziqan asked, "Did Li Tao tell you about Penyuan?" Gu Huayu nodded and said, "As I said, the ancestors of the Pan family saved the life of the founding emperor. After the founding emperor pacified the world, he was grateful for the kindness of the ancestors of the Pan family, so he gave Pan Garden to the ancestors of the Pan family. The Pan family still has Daxing, the only gold medal to avoid death." Lu Ziqan nodded and said, "Well, that's more or less the case. The Pan family has the imperial edict from the founding emperor and the gold medal for immunity from death. Therefore, for several generations, the Pan family has been doing their job and never interacted too much with the prince. Don't talk about taking sides. Because no matter who sits in that position, they will not violate the holy will of the founding emperor, and will only better protect the Pan family and show that the royal family is grateful and values love and justice. Gu Huayu said dully, then why does the head of the Pan family want to stand in line with the king? Just as Lu Zikin was about to speak, the car stopped and Ru Xian said, Master, the princess is here. Xiao is back. Where did they find you? Mrs. Ping's voice sounded outside the car. Gu Huayu's eyes widened and she asked in a low voice, why is Aunt Ping here? It's good to find it. Nothing happened, right? Mrs. Jian's voice came next. Gu Huayu looked at Lu Zikin, pointed to the outside of the car, and whispered, your aunt. Lu Zikin nodded, yes, when I was looking for you on the street in the afternoon, I met my aunt and Aunt Ping. They went to the Daxiakuo temple to find the master to see the wedding date for their eldest cousin and Miss Shi-san. Your aunt and Aunt Ping heard that you ran away from home, so they joined the search for you. In order to find you, people from the Qingqiu Duke's mansion and Shi Shangshu's mansion set out one after another. Gu Huayu's pupils were shaking, and she muttered in annoyance, if I had known there would be such a big battle, I would have gone home and slept. Lu Zikin asked while stroking Gu Huayu's hair, where do you sleep? Gu Huayu glanced at Lu Zikin, waved her hands, and walked out of the car first, I won't tell you, get off the car. Gu Huayu opened the curtain and jumped out of the car. Seeing the yard full of people, she bowed apologetically to everyone and said, I'm sorry for making everyone worry about me. Mrs. Ping stepped forward and took Gu Huayu's hand. She looked up and down and asked with concern, where have you been, girl? Is there anything wrong? Gu Huayu shook her head sheepishly, thank you, Aunt Ping, it's okay. LV Zikin got out of the car and bowed to Mrs. Ping and Mrs. Jian. Mrs. Ping looked at Lu Zikin, then at Gu Huayu, and asked in shock, you two came back in the same car. At this point, Mrs. Ping suddenly thought of something, looked at Gu Huayu and asked, why did Zikin make you angry? Are you together today? Gu Huayu looked at Lu Zikin and didn't know how to reply to Mrs. Ping's question. Mrs. Jian looked at the people in the courtyard and hurriedly stepped forward to smooth things over and said, let's ask Zikin later. Yan Ran, are you hungry? Where is the maid serving? Quickly take the princess to wash up. Yan Ran went to wash up first and then eat something. Landong hurriedly stepped forward and bent his knees, my servant is here. Princess, let's go and wash up first. Gu Huayu thanked Mrs. Jian for blessing her and fled to her yard. Mrs. Ping looked at Wang Qin and said, Wang Guard, Yan Ran is back safely. Everyone has worked hard. Let everyone go down and rest. Wang Qin leaned forward and said, thank you, madam. I'll make arrangements right now. Wang Qin turned around and gave instructions, and the people in the yard retreated. LV Zikin let Mrs. Ping and Mrs. Jian into the living room. Entering the living room, Mrs. Ping asked with a gossipy face, Zikin, is the person in your heart Yan Ran? Lu Zikin did not deny it, leaned forward and said, back to Aunt Ping, yes. Mrs. Ping turned to look at Mrs. Jian, my dear, you knew this earlier? Didn't you? Mrs. Jian pursed her lips and smiled and said, these two children kept it a secret, and we only found out about Yan Ran's life experience. Because Zikin has been having a rough life recently and has encountered many troubles, his mother and sister Shan went to the temple to ask for Zikin's fortune. The master said that Zikin had an evil star this year and there were always villains causing trouble, so it's not peaceful. The mother made up her mind to wait until Zikin passed the exam before coming to propose marriage. Since we have not yet proposed marriage, and considering Yan Ran's reputation, their affairs were not made public. However, after today, everyone in the capital who wants to know will probably know. After hearing this, Mrs. Ping nodded and said, so that's it? You guys really kept it a secret. After saying that, Mrs. Ping looked at Lu Zikin, What are you going to do if today's incident spreads? Don't worry about it. It's up to others to do whatever they want. If the family feud is not avenged, I won't discuss the marriage. Gu Huayu came in from outside and said. Mrs. Ping objected, you girl, the reputation of a girl's family is so important, how can you not care? Gu Huayu looked at Lu Ziqin, if my reputation is bad, Qinjian won't marry me. Lu Ziqin shook his head and said with a smile, marry, how can I not marry? I wish I could marry him back immediately. Gu Huayu turned to ask Mrs. Jian, Madam, my reputation is bad, will you look down on me? Mrs. Jian smiled and said, no, how could I despise the princess because of gossip? Gu Huayu turned to Mrs. Ping and said, so Aunt Ping doesn't have to worry about me. As long as Ziqin doesn't dislike me, Mrs. Chengqiagong, Madam, Mrs. Ye and others don't look down on me, my life will not be bad. I don't care. What do irrelevant people do? Mrs. Ping suddenly understood and said with a smile, you girl, you can live a free and easy life. Mrs. Jian said with a smile, the princess is young, but she thinks very clearly and is very independent. It is really rare that Ziqin can marry the princess. It is Ziqin's blessing that he has cultivated for several generations. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 269. Chapter 269 Communication. Princess, the food is ready. Ling Dong came in and reported. Mrs. Jian said, it's getting late, Yan Ran goes to eat quickly. I'm going back. Where are you Yingzi? Are you going back or staying? Mrs. Ping looked at the hourglass and said, it's already time. It's getting late, so I'm going back. Gu Huayu said to Lu Ziqin, Brother Ziqin, please go back with Mrs. Jian and see Aunt Ping off by the way. Brother Ziqin? Lu Ziqin looked at Gu Huayu, the little guy shouldn't change his face too quickly. He originally wanted to leave later, but since the little guy had spoken, he fulfilled the little guy's wish, leaned forward and said, okay. Xiao, please have something to eat and rest early. After speaking, Lu Ziqin raised his eyebrows at Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu sent a few people to the door of the house, watched the carriage and horses go away, and then turned around and walked into the house. Gu Huayu returned to her small courtyard after dinner and saw a few more maids in the yard. Asked, what's going on? Ling Dong bent her knees and explained, back to the princess, they were sent by Xi Niang to serve the princess. Xi Niang said that from now on, the princess must take people with her wherever she goes. Today was just an accident. The princess's accident alarmed people in several houses. When Gu Huayu heard the words, she turned back to look at the courtyard door and saw Xi Niang leaning against the door frame with her arms folded in front of her chest. Gu Huayu knew that today's incident had offended Xi Niang, so she didn't dare to talk back to her. She asked with a smile, Xi Niang is here, why didn't I see you just now? A trace of panic flashed across Xi Niang's eyes, and she pretended to be calm and said with a straight face, don't interrupt, they will serve the princess from now on. The princess needs to take them with her when she goes out. Gu Huayu is used to being alone and doesn't like to be followed by maids and women who are shouting at each other. She wanted to refuse, but seeing Xi Niang's firmness, she had no choice but to nod in agreement, thinking about looking for an opportunity to send him away later. Seeing that Gu Huayu agreed happily, Xi Niang's face softened a lot, said, it's getting late, let's take a rest early. After Gu Huayu waited for Xi Niang to leave, she said to Lonisara, take them down to rest. The maid bent her knees and said, Xi Niang ordered that the servant must serve the princess. Gu Huayu went crazy and said, I am the master. Several maids knelt down in unison. The princess has mercy on you, please accept some slaves. Shi Niang has said that if the slaves don't serve the master well, Shi Niang will beat them up. Gu Huayu said to Lonicera, go and call the stinky foot immortal over. No need to call, I'm here, Shi Niang said, standing at the door. She knew that this girl was so happy that she must be moved. As expected, this happened. Gu Huayu looked at Shi Niang and said, I don't want people to wait close to me. Hurry up and ask them to retreat. Immortal stinky feet, allowing 2 people to follow you when you go out is my biggest concession. Don't challenge my bottom line. Isn't it good to take care of someone? You need to be cured of your stinky problem. Don't tell me this. Grandma needs her own space. She doesn't like people hanging around her when she returns to her own room. Where did they come from? Where do you send them? Gu Hua said in a hurried tone. You are a dignified princess, what do you mean if you don't have someone to serve you? Shi Niang argued with reason. Gu Huayu retorted, a noble princess can't make herself comfortable as she pleases. What do I want from this princess? You are the princess, watch your words. Gu Huayu clasped her hands on her chest and said nonchalantly, I grew up in the mountains, so I am vulgar. You like people to serve you and take them all away, but I don't want them. The door is over there, so walk slowly and don't send them away. After saying that, Gu Huayu walked up to the house. Shi Niang said to Gu Huayu's back, you little girl, you must keep your word. You must take 2 people with you when you go out. The corners of Gu Huayu's mouth raised, and she immediately said with a straight face, I know, teach them the rules, and when they come to me, they have to obey my orders. If you dare to contradict me again, I will send them out immediately. Shi Niang said angrily, I know. Liandong, you take them down. They are responsible for the princess's travels. You arrange a shift for them. Gu Huayu heard the footsteps and left the small courtyard, snorted and said, Stinky feet fairy, housekeeper. Gu Huayu leaned back on the soft couch, thinking about Lu Zikin's words, and wondering whether to go to Peinyuan tomorrow. If King Qi really has his thoughts on her, she would not be able to avoid him because of King Qi's character. Since you can't avoid it, face it calmly, take advantage of it as you see it, and remain unchanged in the face of all changes. By the way, let's settle the score between him and Lu Zikin. Gu Huayu made up her mind and leaned on the soft couch to relax, going through today's events in her mind. Although he was annoyed by Lu Zikin's inexplicable mood before, his temper brought the 2 of them closer. Although the movement is a bit loud, the result is good. Thinking of this, Gu Huayu suddenly thought of Lu Zikin's hands at the Wine Li's meatball stall. Sitting up straight, Gu Huayu took off Qing Feng and put it upright on the table. She asked in a deep voice, what did you do to Zikin's hand before? Qing Feng lay down on the table pretending to be dead. Gu Huayu stretched out her hand to straighten him up, stand still. Green Wind stood erect and motionless. Gu Huayu said, what's the matter if you fall? Do you dare to do it or not? What kind of a good man is that? Did you do Zikin's hand? You did it? Turn around for me. Qing Feng turned around on the table. He, it is indeed this guy who is causing trouble. Gu Huayu said with a straight face, listen to me, Zikin is the person I care about, and I don't allow you to attack him, do you understand? I understand, turn around. Qing Feng lay down directly. Gu Huayu became angry and bared her teeth at Qing Feng, stand still, I can't control you anymore. Believe it or not, I will throw you into the toilet. Qing Feng stood motionless on the table, looking majestic and unyielding, not paying attention to Gu Huayu's words. Gu Huayu tapped the table with her fingers and said in a lower voice, Zikin made me angry today. You stand up for me. I know you are doing it for my own good. Qing Feng moved closer to Gu Huayu and rubbed her fingers. Gu Huayu's heart softened even more, and she reached out and touched it, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have yelled at you just now. I apologize to you. Qing Feng rubbed Gu Huayu's fingers again. Gu Huayu looked at Qing Feng and said, Zikan has no ill intentions towards me, he will not hurt me. We have a dispute because we look at the problem from different angles and do not reach a consensus, leading to misunderstandings. Disputes are just a way for two people to communicate, and it does not mean that he will hurt me. He is the person I care about, you can't attack him, do you understand? Qing Feng straightened up and spun around on the table. Be good, Gu Huayu put Qing Feng back on her index finger. It's getting late, let's take a rest. Perhaps she slept for a long time in the afternoon, but Gu Huayu didn't feel sleepy. Thinking of going to Panyuan to listen to a play tomorrow, Gu Huayu closed her eyes and forced herself to sleep. The next day, Gu Huayu got up at midnight, and just after washing up, Lian Dong came in and said, Miss, Shi Niang wants to see you. Gu Huayu said in surprise, what is she doing here so early in the morning? Lan Dong shook his head, I don't know. Bring her in. Lonicera retreated, and after a while, Shi Niang came in and bowed her knees to Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu looked at Shi Niang and asked, is something wrong? Shi Niang leaned forward and said, come down and ask the princess for a few days' leave. Gu Huayu blurted out and asked, how many days are you going to take leave? How many days? What are you going to do? Shi Niang said, on the 7th day, 2 days later it will be the birthday of one of my benefactors. I want to perform rituals for her in the temple for a few days. Gu Huayu asked, your benefactor is deceased. Shi Niang leaned forward and said, back to the princess, my benefactor has been gone for many years. Gu Huayu nodded, go ahead. Go to the accountant's office to pay as much money as you need. The more money you need, the more places you need money. Leave the affairs of the house to Wang Qin. Thank you, princess, I understand. Gu Huayu sat at the dressing table, comb my hair, I'm going out soon. Shi Niang picked up the comb and combed Gu Huayu's hair while asking, where do you want to go, princess? What kind of headgear do you want to wear? Gu Huayu said casually, I'm going to Panyuan to watch a play. I'll just put my hair in a normal bun and wear a normal headdress. Shi Niang paused her hand and asked, Panyuan? When did the princess book Panyuan seat? Gu Huayu said, I didn't make the decision, it was King Qi who decided to take the throne because of his love. Shi Niang stopped combing her hair and looked at the mirror. Gu Huayu asked, when did the princess become acquainted with the King of Qi? The King of Qi also invited the princess to watch a play in Panyuan. Gu Huayu looked at Shi Niang and asked, do you know King Qi? Also know Panyuan? You are very familiar with the capital. Facing Gu Huayu's questioning gaze, Shi Niang panicked. She lowered her head with evasive eyes and continued to comb Gu Huayu's hair. I have been in the capital for more than 2 months, and I have heard a lot of anecdotes about the capital. Gu Huayu revealed, you have been in the house all day, and I have been walking around all day. I have only known Panyuan for these 2 days. Tell me, how did you know Panyuan? While combing Gu Huayu's hair, Shi Niang said, don't your second sister-in-law, Wang, like to go to the theater? In those days, she ran to the elephant shed all day long and listened to many interesting things in the theater troupe. Come back and show off to the servants in the house who is the best elephant actor, and who comes from the Panjiawan house. I listened casually, and I knew that a Panjiawan house was hard to find. Gu Huayu stared at Shi Niang in the mirror, thinking that Wang could indeed do such a thing, and believed her words. Shi Niang took a string of beaded flowers from the sandalwood box and was about to put it on Gu Huayu, but Gu Huayu stopped her. Change it? This one is too fancy and not suitable for me. Shi Niang looked at Gu Huayu in the mirror, and then touched Gu Huayu's head with the pearl flower in her hand. Is this fancy? Why do I think it's just right? The princess's skin is white, and this flower suits the princess very well. Shi Niang tried to persuade Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu became anxious and took the beaded flower from Shi Niang's hand and put it back into the sandalwood box. It's too fancy. If you don't need this, just tie it with a hair tie. I'm going to the theater today, and I'm just an audience member. It's always best to be ordinary, no need to dress up. Shi Niang took out 2 hair ropes from the sandalwood box and tied them while asking, "Did the princess quarrel with Mr. Lu yesterday because of going to Penyuan to watch a play?" Gu Huayu turned to look at Shi Niang. Shi Niang hurriedly reminded, "Your hair is loose, sit still and don't move." Gu Huayu's head was pulled painfully, so she quickly sat upright. "Stinky Foot Immortal, you are so amazing. How do you know that this is the reason why Mr. Lu and I are at odds with each other?" Shi Niang said, "I can tell. How could the princess accept King Qi's appointment?" Gu Huayu sighed and said, "I can't refuse the kindness." As she said that, Gu Huayu briefly talked about the matter of the Immortal Tower. After hearing this, Shi Niang said, "Since the princess has decided to go to the appointment, she should be more careful and protect herself. Remember to bring Begonia and Liwa." "Who are Haitang and Liwa?" Shi Niang said angrily, "2 of the maids you kicked out of the yard last night. These maids were given to me by Huada and asked me to teach them the rules. They have good skills. It is best to count crab apples and pear blossoms." Gu Huayu nodded, "I understand." After Gu Huayu had finished packing, the concierge came to report, "Princess, Miss Shi-san is here. Miss Shi said she was waiting for the princess at the door and will not come in." Gu Huayu nodded, "I understand, tell Miss Thur that I will be there soon." The servants retreat. Gu Huayu turned to Liao Dong and said, "You also come with me. You and Haitang Liwa sit in the same car." Lonisara bowed her knees and said, "Okay, I understand." Gu Huayu went to the door and saw Li Tao standing beside Shi Yame's carriage, waving a folding fan, and asked, "When did you arrive?" "We just arrived. Are we ready to go? Shall we go?" Li Tao turned around and saw Gu Huayu, put away his folding fan and prepared to mount his horse. Shi Yame poked his head out and saw 2 cars behind Gu Huayu, and asked, "Xiao is taking someone on a trip today?" Gu Huayu spread her hands and said helplessly, "I can't help it. They won't let me go out alone." "Okay, I'll sit in the same car with you." After saying that, Shi Yame got out of the car. Shi Yame got into Gu Huayu's car, Li Tao followed on horseback, and the group headed towards Penyuan. Shi Yame had just sat firmly, staring at Gu Huayu with his eyes, and asked with a gossipy face, "I heard that Lulu was looking for you on the street for a long time yesterday. Where did you hide? Where did you find Lulu?" After sending Aunt Ping away yesterday, Gu Huayu knew that she would inevitably be questioned by Shi Yame today, so she was mentally prepared and asked calmly, "Why do you ask so clearly?" "I'm curious. Yesterday I was talking to my elder sister-in-law at the princess mansion. I didn't leave the princess mansion until Yushi. When I returned to the mansion, I heard that the second sister-in-law said that people in the mansion were out to look for you. Xiao, the only person on the street who can make Lulu get angry is you. In the whole capital, you are the best. It's a pity that I couldn't catch a glimpse of Lulu's anxious expression. If I had known better, I wouldn't have gone to the princess's house yesterday. I would have gone to the street to look for you." Gu Huayu. "Xiao, Lulu made you angry. Then why don't you come to me?" Li Tao asked. Shi Yame raised the curtains and glared at Li Tao, "Why did Xiao come to you? Let you fight Lulu? If it's a fight, it's not like she can't win. She wants you to come and cause trouble. Where did you go yesterday? Where did Lulu finally find you?" Seeing Shi Yame's questioning, Gu Huayu said, "I didn't go anywhere, I just walked around." "Is your wedding date set?" Gu Huayu replied perfunctorily and immediately changed the topic. Shi Yame nodded and said, "It's settled." The wedding date is set for the 16th day of the winter lunar month. End of this chapter. The Rebirth of Space, the lucky girl from a farm family. Author, he would fire every. Chapter 270. Chapter 270, Cherishing Blessings. Shiyame leaned over and lowered his voice. Congratulations, congratulations, you are lovers and finally getting married. After hearing this, Gu Huayu bowed happily and said congratulations. Shiyame raised her finger, and Gu Huayu's voice immediately dropped. Xiao, what are you congratulating? What are you two muttering about? Li Tao heard a congratulation, but couldn't hear the rest clearly, so he raised his voice and asked. Gu Huayu wanted to tell him, but Shiyame stretched out her hand to cover Gu Huayu's mouth and said first, it's nothing, how long until we arrive? Gu Huayu took away Shiyame's hand and asked, why don't you let Li Er know about this great joy? It's the time for men to get married, and it's time for women to get married. What are you ashamed of? Li Er, Yame is getting married on the 16th day of the winter lunar month. You have to add makeup to her. Li Tao was also filled with joy after hearing this. He raised his eyebrows and said, congratulations. I wish you a happy marriage and a son soon. Li Er, you're such a big mouth, don't keep yelling for a while. Shiyame opened the curtain and warned. The smile on Li Tao's face froze and he said, Shi-san, tell me clearly, when did I have a big mouth? You are the big mouth, okay. Who in the capital doesn't know that you are bold and have a big mouth? The two got into an argument about who was the loud mouth. Gu Huayu sat aside and watched the two of them bickering with each other. Just when Gu Huayu was enjoying the show, Shiyame turned her head and looked at Gu Huayu. Xiao, we are arguing like this. If you don't stand up and say something fair, you are still laughing. It's not interesting. Li Tao turned his attention to Gu Huayu. It's fun to watch Shi-san and I quarrel. Huh. The two of them pointed their guns at Gu Huayu at the same time. Gu Huayu was so frightened that she waved her hands and said, you two have misunderstood. Shiyame stared at Gu Huayu and asked, why did we misunderstand you? Gu Huayu glanced at Li Tao, who looked at her, waiting for her answer. Gu Huayu gave a thumbs up to the two of them. Your fighting power is this, and others can't even speak. I want to help, but I am willing but not strong enough. There is nothing I can do about it, right? After speaking, Gu Huayu made a helpless expression. You're a bad girl, you deserve a beating. Shiyame raised her hand to hit Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu hurriedly raised her hand to block it. Yame, stop it. Hello, Your Majesty. Li Tao's voice sounded. Shiyame took back his hand and sat upright. He looked out the window and asked, is this the time? Gu Huayu said without fear of death, you know how powerful you two are, right? We have been arguing all the way, it's amazing. King Qi saw Gu Huayu and Shi Mansion's carriage and asked, Brother Tao came here with the princess. Li Tao leaned forward and said, yes. I happened to meet Xiao Yu and Shi-san on the way here. King Yu said, princess, cousin, are here. Cars and horses can only go so far. Gu Huayu and Shiyame got off the car and saw Li Cheng and a man wearing a moon-white wide-sleeved robe standing next to King Qi. The man had a tall and straight posture, sword-shaped eyebrows and starry eyes, and a smile on his face that looked very amiable. The king of Qi made the introduction, Mr. Pan, this is Princess Yan Ran and the third lady of Shangshu Mansion. Yan Ran, Miss Shi, this is Mr. Pan, the head of Pan Yuan. Pan Junian cupped his hands and bowed, hello, Princess, Miss Shi-san, and Mr. Li. Gu Huayu is blessed and honored. After some polite greetings, Pan Junian Li let everyone go into the garden. The group had just passed the screen wall when Gu Huayu saw Zhang Ying, Lu Yu, Lin Wangshu, and three women coming to greet them. Shi Yame whispered to Gu Huayu, the one behind Zhang Ying in blue is Zhang Ying's sister Zhang Xinran, The other in pomegranate red dress is Li Yiyi, the third young lady of the Li family, and next to Li Yiyi is the fourth young lady of the Li family. Li Yishan. Gu Huayu looked at Zhang Xinran. Zhang Xinran was looking at her, their eyes facing each other. Zhang Xinran smiled and smiled at her. Gu Huayu repays the gift with blessings. The Li sisters reluctantly blessed Gu Huayu, and Gu Huayu returned the favor with a smile. Li Tao frowned slightly, looked at Li Yiyi and Li Yishan and asked, "Why are you two here?" Li Yiyi glanced at Li Tao and asked, "Why can't we come? Second brother doesn't bring me and Yishan, let alone it, but he comes to question us, what does second brother mean by this?" Li Tao didn't expect that his sister would be unhappy with his question. "You girl, you can be sarcastic when you like what you say. I didn't hear you say you were coming at home, so I'm just a little surprised to see you two here. Your Majesty invites people to watch a play. I came because of His Majesty's kindness. What can I do?" Li Cheng looked at the two people who were facing each other, shook his head and said, "It's okay for you two to quarrel at home. It's really a headache for you to quarrel when you go out. You quarrel when you meet, and you're not afraid of people laughing at you." As if he was used to it, King Qi asked Li Yiyi with a smile, "Brother Tao, why did I offend you again?" Li Yiyi glanced at Li Tao and said, "Humph, how can he see us girls in his eyes?" Li Tao glared back, "When did you consider me your brother?" Li Cheng pulled Li Tao and said, "Can't you say a few words less?" Li Tao glared at Li Yiyi and said nothing. King Qi whispered something to Li Yiyi in a low voice. Li Yiyi immediately smiled and turned around and raised an eyebrow at Li Tao provocatively. Gu Huayu watched the interaction between the Li brothers and sisters and King Qi. "The princess's clothes are so beautiful. Are they made in Jixi Yufang?" Zhang Xinran walked up to Gu Huayu at some point. Gu Huayu looked back at Zhang Xinran, looked down at her clothes, smiled and shook her head, "No, I didn't buy these clothes, they were made by my family." Zhang Xinran went from praising Gu Huayu's clothes to praising the workmanship of the clothes. Although Gu Huayu knew that Zhang Xinran was talking to her, she still liked her very much. The little girl has fair skin, a pair of clear big eyes, and a slightly baby fat face that looks a bit cute, which makes Gu Huayu like her very much and is willing to get close to her. One took the initiative to strike up a conversation, and the other truly accepted them. After a while, Zhang Xinran, Gu Huayu and Shi Yamei were talking about being together, as if they were old friends for many years. Entering Pan's theater, Pan Junian moved King Qi to the middle position. King Qi turned to look at Gu Huayu and pointed to the seat next to him with his folding fan, "Yan Ran, sit here. There are two pairs of people under the stage, and there is a square table between the two places. Fruits, refreshments, and other food are placed on the square table." After hearing what King Qi said, everyone was stunned. Pan Junian quickly came to his senses and said with a smile, "The princess is of high status, please take a seat." When Pan Yuan is watching a play, when do you distinguish between superior and inferior? For many years, the seats in Pan Yuan have been clearly marked with prices, and they are available on a first-come, first-served basis. Whoever grabs it first gets it. There has never been any special arrangement for him because of who the emperor's grandson is. Li Yiyi looked at Gu Huayu with a sullen face. In such a posture, Gu Huayu dared not respond, so she rushed forward and tore her apart. Li Tao looked at King Qi, then at Gu Huayu, and said with a smile, "Your Majesty, Xiao always sits on the left when watching plays." As he spoke, Li Tao pointed to the left corner of the stage. King Qi asked in confusion, "Why? How do you know?" Li Tao said nonsensically, "Hi, Shi-san, Xiao Yu, the three of us went to the Lu family elephant shed in the south of the city to watch a few plays. Every time she goes back, Xiao always sits in that position, saying that she has been sitting in that position since she was a child when watching operas in the village. He also said that the location was the best." It was close to the stage, so he could see clearly and hear clearly. "Shi-san, that's what Xiao said, right?" Shi-yame came over understandingly and helped with the nonsense. "That's right, Xiao is stubborn and accepts death. No matter what Li Er and I say to her, it's useless. She just likes that position." King Chi looked at Gu Huayu and asked, "Yan Ran, which seat do you like to sit in?" Gu Huayu felt warm in her heart when she saw the two guys talking nonsense and their faces were not red and their hearts were not beating. Turning his head to look at King Chi, Fu Shen said, "Your Majesty, yes. When I was in Shishan, it was rare for anyone in the village to hire an opera troupe to sing. Only when there is a big happy event in the family of a well-off family in the village, the theater troupe will be invited to perform on the stage. People from neighboring villages will come to see the fun if they know about it. There are too many people and if they are far away from the stage, they will not be able to hear clearly. I like to lie down on the left side of the stage, so that I can see and hear clearly without affecting their enjoyment of the show. Over time, you develop a habit, so please don't laugh. Thank you for your kindness, Your Majesty. I will take the seat on the left. I hope Your Majesty can understand." Gu Huayu's words were sincere, and Li Tao and Shi Yame secretly cheered. They talked casually, just because King Chi didn't force Gu Huayu to sit next to him. "I didn't expect that Gu Huayu could follow their wishes and make the lie so touching. The King of Qi also had to let her sit in the left corner, otherwise, the King of Qi would become an inconsiderate person." After hearing what Gu Huayu said, King Qi looked at her with a deeper look. She said with a smile but not a smile, "There are not many people nowadays and the place is not big. Why don't Yan Ran try to change it?" Gu Huayu shook her head and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty. In front of me, there were more people on the left side so that I could see and hear clearly. Now you can sit on the left seat even though you don't have to sit on the left. This is a reminder to yourself at all times, so that you don't forget the past. Shangtai village had a happy childhood for my daughter, and that land was a boon for her upbringing. So, for the courtier, it's just a position. It's not that it can't be changed, it's that the courtier doesn't want to change." Lin Wangshu did not expect that Gu Huayu would respond to King Chi like this. Anyone could tell when she said these words that she was declining King Chi's kindness. Lu Yu looked at Gu Huayu with a darker look. These words came from a lady of 14 or 15 years old, which really shocked him. Zhang Yings looked at King Chi and then at Gu Huayu with great interest. Today's play is comparable to the play on Panyuanta, it is wonderful. He had a hunch that the princess in front of him was extraordinary. He had noticed it that day during the pot-throwing game. She could obviously hit the target with the arrow, but she slightly shook her wrist in her shooting hand, causing the arrow to go along the trajectory she expected and land outside the pot. While others work hard to win, she works hard to lose. Such people are not simple. Zhang Xinran clenched her hands tightly to help Gu Huayu. "You must know that the person who asked to sit with her was not an ordinary person, but King Qi, who was the eldest son of the emperor. Looking around the world, how many people want to get close to this man? How many people go out of their way to please this man without being noticed by him? Other than the emperor and the noble concubine, who dares to say harsh words to this man? Who dares to please this master?" However, the princess declined the offer in front of many people present. Li Yi has never seen King Qi be so interested in any girl. King Qi's attitude towards Gu Huayu today made her feel a heavy sense of crisis. Li Yi looked at Gu Huayu nervously, her nails digging into her flesh without even noticing the pain. Li Yishan was younger. She could only see that Gu Huayu was unwilling to sit with the prince's cousin, and that the prince's cousin was a little unhappy. The atmosphere in the room was a bit awkward. Li Cheng smoothed things over and said, "The princess is young, but she is a passionate person. The prince will naturally fulfill the princess' wishes." King Qi shook his folding fan and said with a smile, I am very moved by Yan Ran's sincerity and simplicity, so I will naturally fulfill her wish. Not only do I want to fulfill my wish, I also want to sit on the edge and feel it, to see if that position is as Yan Ran said, where I can both see and hear clearly. With that said, King Chi waved his folding fan and walked to the left. The king of Chi came to the meeting with several of his own kings, and everyone held their breaths and listened with rapt attention. No one present said anything. Shi Yame didn't expect that after Gu Huayu said everything, King Chi would sit down with Gu Huayu. Is this man pretending to be stupid or is he shameless? Shi Yame was so angry that her teeth itched. She squeezed Gu Huayu's hand and whispered, "What should I do?" Although Shi Yame's voice was low, the room was too quiet at the moment. King Chi heard Shi Yame's voice, but he didn't hear it clearly. King Chi turned to look at Shi Yame and asked, "What did Miss Shi-san say?" Shi Yame cursed King Chi in his heart and said, "Fu Shen, go back to the king, my daughter said to Xiao Yu, she is blessed." King Chi raised his eyebrows and said with a smile, "Well, this is the truth. I also feel that Yan Ran is blessed. However, if you are blessed, you must cherish your blessing." Shi Yame's mouth twitched after hearing what King Chi said. This was the first time she had seen such a conceited person in her life. King Chi sat down, nodded the seat next to him with a folding fan, and said, "Yan Ran, come and sit. You guys should also sit down. We are the only ones in the room. We can sit casually. It is rare for everyone to get together in one place, so there is no need to be formal." Gu Huayu looked at King Chi and then at everyone. Zhang Ying looked at her as if watching a good show, and then at King Chi who had already sat down. Zhang Ying pursed her lips with a half smile, found a seat with a good view, and sat down. She reached out and tapped the seat next to her, and said to Zhang Xinran, Ran, sit here." Zhang Xinran sat over obediently. Li Tao spread his hands to Gu Huayu and expressed that he was helpless. Seeing Zhang Ying and Zhang Xinran sitting together, Shi Yame felt moved and said to Li Tao, "Li Er, sit next to me. The view here is also good." Before Li Tao came over, Lu Yu sat down next to Shi Yame. "Well, this location is good. I'll sit here." Lin Wangshu pointed to the position next to him and said to Li Tao, "Second young master, the perspective here is not bad." Li Tao sat down next to Lin Wangshu and pursed his lips at Gu Huayu. Gu Huayu gave Li Tao a reassuring look and told him not to worry. We were just sitting together watching a show, could he still eat her? Thinking like this, Gu Huayu walked over and sat next to King Chi. Seeing everyone sitting down, Pan Junian bowed to King Chi and said, "Your Majesty, let's start." King Chi nodded, "Okay, let's start." End of this chapter.